Jake stood on the high wall, looking down at the chaotic scene below, silently assessing the situation. Mercenaries were nothing but lowlifes. They sold their lives without a second thought. He looked at the blood-stained swords planted in the ground. The reason they were paid so handsomely was because it was a certainty that they were willing to sell their lives for their masters. He sank into his own thoughts. Even though he had to swallow those bitter words from his employers every day, Jake tipped the wine bottle in his hand upside down. But what could he do? He tossed the empty bottle into the fire below and thought, "That's just the life of a mercenary." Jake muttered to himself, "Nobles are all the same." He said with amusement, "When they need you, they promise you the moon and the stars." The commander standing behind him interrupted. "Land titles," he thought. But in the end, they all go back on their word as if they'd planned it together. The corner of Jake's mouth curled into a smirk, and they come up with the most ridiculous excuses. He turned around, walking inside and monologuing. "And yet, what you just told me is the absolute masterpiece among all those lies." Jake raised his voice in excitement. "I must have heard you wrong, right?" He looked straight into the eyes of the man opposite him, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Lord Commander?" The commander replied in an emotionless tone, "You didn't hear wrong. I just told you to go die." He calmly replied, "Sir, perhaps you've forgotten who I am." He confronted him without flinching. "I haven't forgotten. You are Jake, the captain of the Wolf Fong Mercenary Corps." Jake couldn't help but burst out laughing. "You know exactly who I am, yet you still say that." The commander replied sarcastically, "It seems you have a sense of humor too." He spoke while gripping the sword on his back tightly. "Are you ordering a lowly mercenary like me to fight and die a noble death like a true knight?" Jake's pupils turned red like a predator on the hunt. That can't be it, right? As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere between the two sank into a tense silence. He closed his eyes and sighed. "Perhaps my words were a bit abrupt." The commander softened his tone. "If I caused a misunderstanding, I apologize." Jake was a bit surprised to hear these words from him. "Misunderstanding?" The commander raised his voice clearly. "I only intended to give you your final mission." He frowned warily upon hearing his words. As many already know, due to a series of consecutive defeats, the commander looked at the sea of fire behind Jake and continued, "Our situation is hanging by a thread. Below, there is an army of soldiers lined up neatly. Now, the rebels' blades are at the family's throat." He continued to ramble on. "A family that has protected this land for generations." The commander finally backed down. "I have no way out. That's why my words were a bit rushed." He still smiled frivolously. "I see. I completely understand, Lord Commander." Jake's attitude changed instantly. "It's all forced by the circumstances." He knew in his heart, "Looks like it's time to pack up and get out of here." He looked at the man's cold face and silently evaluated. For an outstanding talent of the Empire to be pushed to this point, it shows just how bad the situation is. Anyway, among the nobles, he's one of the reasonable ones. What a pity, Jake suddenly realized, wait, in this situation, there's still a final mission? It's probably just scouting or clearing an escape route. For a mission like that, I might as well put in a little last-minute effort to get the rest of the pay. He maintained a gloomy attitude and said, "The mission is very simple. Tomorrow, the rebels will launch a full-scale attack. I want you to hold them off with me for a while." The commander looked down at the sea of fire below and continued, "Until my lord retreats safely." "No, if that is impossible." His eyes were emotionless as he emphasized every word. "Then just hold out until I fall." The commander held out a red stone and said, "The rest of your payment will be settled with this. When you retreat." Before he could finish his sentence, Jake swatted the stone away. "With this amount, it will be enough for your corps to operate for 3 years." The commander was stunned and surprised by Jake's attitude. "What are you doing?" He replied in an angry tone. "That's the question I should be asking you." Jake growled furiously. "Just because I'm always smiling, you think I'm a fucking idiot?" He lost his temper and yelled, "How is your order any different from telling us to be cannon fodder?" Jake didn't hide his emotions and mocked. "Even if we join the fight, we'll only last a little while." He cleared his throat and questioned, "You want us to throw our lives away just to buy a little time for your lord to escape?" The commander looked down at the soldiers impaled on wooden stakes and said, "Fine. Let's say there's a miracle and we successfully defend the city. Then what? Do you think they'll just let us leave with our lives?" He paused for a moment. "You," the commander judged loudly, "are mercenaries, not knights. The enemy knows that very well. Once I die, they won't bother chasing you down." He didn't deny it. "That's right. If we go by the usual practices of this profession, that is true." He burst into maniacal laughter. "But you already know the truth, don't you? To those rebels, our core," he suddenly remembered things from the past, "has been deemed their sworn enemy. They'd love nothing more than to tear us into 100 pieces." Jake had once pretended to be a wounded soldier leaning against a tree to attract the attention of a squad of knights. The commander on horseback waved for the other soldiers to come over. He tiptoed over to inspect, unaware that Jake's hand was secretly gripping the knife beside him. Jake decisively gave the naive soldier a one-way ticket to the afterlife. His action left the remaining soldiers stunned and bewildered. He looked at them with cold eyes, hearing the screams in his ears. "It's a trap." Jake charged at them amidst the screams. "They're not our men. It's the Wolf Fong mercenary corps." He roared angrily. "You bastards! Disguising yourselves as corpses." The commander sweated and threatened. "You have no honor." Before he could finish his sentence, his head was chopped off by Jake. "Why is that?" The commander's severed head rolled at Jake's feet. His sharp, cold eyes looked down. Returning to reality, Jake said casually, "The number of enemy generals whose heads I've chopped off isn't small. You know damn well that's the only reason your side has lasted this long." He leaned in close to his face. "Right now, compared to your lord, they'd much rather tear us into pieces first to satisfy their anger." Jake's lips stopped moving. He asked seriously, "Don't tell me. You factored this in too? You plan to use us as bait to draw their attention?" The commander replied with a serious attitude. "I expect you to simply carry out the mission." He growled, ready to make a move. "If not, I have no choice but to kill you to take command of the corps." Reacting quickly, Jake stepped back. He cursed angrily. "I thought you were a little different from the other nobles. Who knew you were the most disgusting piece of trash of them all?" He maintained his polite demeanor. "I apologize. That is the only sincere thing I can say." Jake angrily gripped the hilt of his sword. "No need to apologize. This is actually better. Because the head of a bastard like you." He grimaced and gritted his teeth. "Even if I hand it over to the bastards lurking out there, I won't feel a shred of guilt." The commander reached up to rub his neck and questioned, "You plan to offer my head to the rebels to beg for your life?" Jake nodded, not denying it. "Yeah, if possible, I'd like to just toss your head to them and run far away." His action stopped when he heard Jake speak. "But I'm sure you've already set things up to trip us up." "If so," Jake spoke clearly, word by word, "as the captain, I must fulfill my duty to the end. The rebels will probably be satisfied with the heads of 2 commanders and spare my brother's lives." The commander was surprised. "2 heads? Don't tell me you. To save my subordinates." His tone was sarcastic. "You plan to offer your own head as well?" The commander thought, "They are all people I casually dragged onto this path." He interrupted, with empty promises that even those at the bottom of society could reach their dreams. Jake gripped the sword in his hand tightly. "They trusted me and followed me all the way here. So I have to take responsibility for them." He drew his sword and pointed it at him. "Because I am the captain." He stared wide-eyed, stunned by Jake's attitude. The commander suddenly burst into laughter. "Yes, that's right." He looked back at the city wall. "That is truly the qualification of a leader." The commander held his head and mocked. "What a pity. If only the one I served wasn't trash." He covered his mouth to hide his sarcastic smile. "But a real person, how wonderful that would be." Jake suddenly swung his sword and leaped toward the commander. He roared furiously as he lunged at him. The commander stood still, making no attempt to dodge Jake's attack. He glared at him. The commander swung his sword and said, "Don't forgive me." Jake's head was severed from his neck, spinning in midair. Even though he had anticipated this outcome, he still carried the thought, "but why does it feel so different? This damn talent." Seeing his indifferent demeanor, Jake accepted it. "Well, this is fine." His final thoughts turned to his comrades. "I told the guys, if I didn't come back in time, they should run away immediately. so I can close my eyes in peace. Asterisk. These endless thoughts kept flashing through Jake's mind. Asterisk, I was always ready for an ending like this. It's just, I still have one regret. If only I had been given the same opportunities as them. Asterisk. How high could I have flown? But the heavens gave Jake another chance at life. He groggily woke up upon hearing a voice calling in his ear. Young master. Young master. Han stood by the bed, calling out anxiously. Please wake up. Jake had reincarnated as Lucien. Who are you? His arm swung up high. Han cried out, his face red, as the arm slapped hard across his face. Please wake up. Lucien held his face in pain. What the hell is this? He was bewildered and confused. Asterisk, I just got slapped? No. Out of nowhere. Which bastard? Asterisk. Han wiped his tears and sniffled. Please get a grip. Lucien was stunned and shocked when he heard him call out. Young Master Lucien. He sat there dazed. What? Lucien sat on the bed, looking at his two hands. It feels like. He broke into a cold sweat in panic. Something is very wrong. Lucien turned pale and thought, first of all, my body is crazy. He looked at his new body in confusion. Asterisk, I was covered in scars and bruised like a piece of trash. Yet what I'm seeing right now are the hands of a young nobleman. So pure they almost smell like fresh grass. Asterisk. Lucien stared blankly at Han sitting by the bed. And, looking at him crying and sniffling, Lucien became even more confused. Asterisk. Who is this kid? He just slapped me, and now he's crying his heart out like this? Asterisk. Han's tears and snot flowed uncontrollably. He lost his composure and wailed. Young master. Thank goodness. I thought you had kicked the bucket. My heart almost stopped. Han's voice trembled with worry. If that had really happened, of course I, your personal servant, would have been beheaded. But putting that aside, wouldn't that be a massive tragedy for our entire family? He still didn't understand the nonsense Han had been babbling about. What the hell is this guy rambling about? Lucien sweated, trying to process the data. Asterisk. Young master? Personal servant? Family? I have nothing to do with any of that. Asterisk. The scenes of his past life situation flashed through his mind. Asterisk. Most importantly, I was already dead then. So there's absolutely no way anyone could have saved me. Asterisk. Lucien sweated as he looked down at his hands. But how? Is my head still attached to my neck? The atmosphere in the room grew heavy again. He warily looked around the entire room. Asterisk. Assessing the situation, there's only one conclusion. Right now. Asterisk. Lucien stepped out of bed. Asterisk. I've transmigrated into the body of a complete stranger. And, asterisk. He smirked, looking at himself in the mirror. I'm super handsome. Han carefully stepped up behind Lucien. He stared at himself in the mirror. Asterisk. Just looking at this face, you can see the noble aura. He must be a noble, right? Asterisk. Lucien silently assessed his current situation. A descendant of a family that reeks of money. He glanced at Han behind him. Asterisk. I need to find more information about this person. His name must be. Asterisk. Lucien asked. Han, I have a question for you. Hearing this, he stood up straight and replied. Yes, young master. Please ask. Lucien turned around and asked. What year is it? Han replied in confusion, probably still dizzy from that evil aura. His next words left Lucien stunned. It is the year 846 of the Empire. He turned pale and thought. Asterisk. What? Asterisk. Lucien quickly realized. Asterisk. 15 years before the day I died. Does that mean I've returned to the past? Asterisk. He held his head wearily. I don't know how this happened, but there are too many surprises to handle. Lucien sighed and replied. All right. I see. He quickly accepted reality. First, I need to focus on what needs to be done. Lucien spoke up. Next question. His next question made Han shiver in fear. Personal servant Han, do you want to die today? He turned pale and trembled. What do you mean? Han clenched his fists in fear as he heard Lucien's interrogation. How dare a servant touch his master's body without permission? He leaned in close and whispered to Han. While I was unconscious, did the rules of this place change? If not, answer me. Lucien put on a stern attitude. Who am I? He turned pale, sweating in fear. Han quickly bowed 90 degrees and said loudly. Please forgive me, young master. I panicked earlier and committed a grave offense. He honestly blurted out. The young master's name is Lucien Vandy. You are the third son of the great Vandy family. Lucien frowned in shock when he heard his name. He suddenly remembered some information about this place. Asterisk if it's Vandy. The Vandy family. Asterisk. The more he thought about it, the more Lucien couldn't believe it. That I know? Information about this family ran through his mind. Asterisk the Vandy family. A pillar that has supported the empire throughout its history. Asterisk. Asterisk a prestigious great family with a rich history. Holding the position of the emperor's closest right hand. Asterisk Lucien also knew. Asterisk they even hold the power to support the royal family. A great family. I'm quite familiar with the situation of this family. Asterisk. He also had memories of this place. Because the Vandy territory is where, 15 years ago, the image of himself yawning widely suddenly appeared in Lucien's mind. I worked as a guard for a few years. He stared at himself in the mirror in shock and bewilderment. Asterisk, but when I died and opened my eyes again, I thought I had gone back to my old job. Only to realize I am the third son of the Vandy family. Asterisk Lucien swallowed hard and chuckled. How bizarre. He remembered his own groveling for money in his past life. All my life, you made me endure all kinds of humiliation in this world. Lucien couldn't help but mock himself. Just because my status was low, he had carried that thought. And now you're giving me an opportunity like this. Lucien continued to sink into his own thoughts. Asterisk if I were given the same opportunities as you people, how far could I develop? Now you want me to prove it? Asterisk. He gradually accepted his current situation. Asterisk fine. If that's what you want, then open your eyes wide and watch. Asterisk Lucien walked over to the window. He opened the window to catch the morning sun. The corners of Lucien's mouth curled into a smile. Asterisk how high will I climb? And how will I live? Asterisk. The early morning sunlight shone down on the ancient mansion. After getting dressed, he walked step by step down the hallway. Asterisk the Grand Duchy of Vandy. I've set foot in all sorts of places during my years as a mercenary, but, asterisk. Lucien looked around as he walked. In terms of magnificence, this place surpasses them all. He paid attention to every single detail. And this is the place I need to quickly become familiar with. Lucien warily looked at the servants here. Incidentally, he noticed the unusual atmosphere around him. Since earlier, the servants here had been whispering to each other. Is that really young Master Lucien? Some people looked at Lucien with strange eyes. He came out. How long has it been? He could feel all of them looking at him. The way they look at me isn't normal at all. Lucien asked, Han, is it just my imagination? Han immediately replied, it's only natural. After all, young master, since you started your seclusion, you haven't seen anyone other than me. He remembered his own disheveled appearance. It's been a year and 2 months. Hearing that, Lucien sighed and chuckled inwardly. Asterisk what kind of nonsense is this now? What was he lacking that he had to lock himself in a corner of his room like that? Asterisk. He continued walking, but his mind was busy with thoughts. Even though I've accepted that the mindset of nobles is hard to understand, acting as I please in this place is impossible. Lucien understood his current situation. Because this place is built on steadfast principles and firm creeds. Asterisk the giant who has protected the empire. Grand Duke Sigmund is in this place. Asterisk he remained lost in his own thoughts. Asterisk there's no way that man would just stand by and watch his own son rot in a corner of a room like that. If so, asterisk. Lucien rubbed his chin in thought. Either this Lucien is such a troublesome child that he's practically been abandoned by the family, or there's some special circumstance forcing the Grand Duke to turn a blind eye. He silently made a decision. Until I find out the exact reason, I must avoid the Grand Duke as much as possible. Edwin suddenly appeared. The reports that you are safe turn out to be true. He smiled gently. Seeing you again after a year, I, the chief butler, am truly overjoyed, young Master Lucien. Edwin asked carefully, do you feel any discomfort walking around? Lucien stared at him. Come to think of it, the Vandy family also has this person. He silently evaluated the man in front of him. Asterisk Chief Butler Edwin. He entered this mansion as a child, a hostage from a hostile family. Yet, thanks to his outstanding abilities, he was recognized and entrusted with handling all household affairs. Asterisk. Lucien quickly remembered. Grand Duke Sigmund's right-hand man. He clenched his fists nervously. Asterisk this is not good at all. I bumped into the person I need to avoid the most. There's no way a person like that wouldn't recognize the behavior of someone from the very bottom of society. Asterisk. Lucien kept a smile on his lips, but his mind was busy with thoughts. The only fact I can rely on is, the chief butler also hasn't seen Lucien for a whole year. He suddenly remembered the commander. If so, let's try imitating him. His cold eyes flashed in Lucien's mind again. The most noble-like person I know. He put on a fake smile. Thank you for your concern, Chief Butler Edwin. Lucien placed a hand on his chest and said, thanks to you, I've recovered a lot. He continued to ramble on. Taking this opportunity, I came out to look into the family matters I've neglected during my seclusion. Who knew I'd run right into the chief butler? What a relief. Lucien's rapid-fire talking surprised him. Has anything happened in the family? Edwin nodded and smiled. Yes, young master. The Vandy family remains strong, as always. It's a relief that you haven't changed, young master. He maintained his fake smile. The chief butler is always protecting this place, so why would anything happen? In his heart, Lucien was constantly worried. Asterisk, he doesn't seem to be suspecting me. Good. Then I'll. Asterisk after that. He turned around and waved at him. As expected, I was worrying over nothing. Well then, I'll be heading back. It's been a while since I came out, so I'm a bit tired. At this moment, Edwin spoke up and suggested, young master, please excuse me, but... Lucien froze when he heard his next words. Please postpone your return for a moment. Edwin announced in a serious tone. Right now, His Grace wishes to see you. He pursed his lips tightly, looking at him nervously. Lucien arrived in front of Sigmund, following Edwin's words. He listened with a stern face as he greeted him. Grand Duke Sigmund. As soon as Lucien finished speaking, the atmosphere fell into silence. He broke into a cold sweat in fear when he heard Sigmund ask, let me ask you, Lucien Vandy. Still, he glared and growled, why are you still alive? The atmosphere between the two sank into a tense silence after Sigmund's question. Lucien was confused and bewildered. Yes? Why do you ask that, father? He cleared his throat and said, I was going to let it go. Sigmund brought up his late wife. You used your mother's death as an excuse, forgot your duties, and became a prodigal son. He clenched his fists in anger. But ultimately, you crossed the line, not satisfied with protesting by locking yourself up for over a year. Sigmund judged loudly. You even took your own life lightly and tried to harm yourself. He lowered his head and thought, what is that all about? Lucien remembered when he first woke up. Asterisk wait. Han's crying face. Asterisk flashed in his mind again. So the reason he was crying and making a fuss. Lucien spoke up to clarify. Father, I think you've misunderstood. He lost his patience and spoke. I'll say this one last time. Sigmund's cold voice echoed down. Spill all the thoughts you've been hiding in that narrow head of yours. He angrily questioned. Wasn't this your goal from the very beginning? Using your weak body and your own hands. Through Sigmund's mouth, he finally learned. To shove sleeping pills into your mouth to cause a scene. That is the reason I want to hear. Lucien's eyes widened in shock. What? He gritted his teeth in anger as he remembered. Asterisk damn it. I was wondering why I didn't have any memories of Lucien. I finally remember. Asterisk memories from 15 years ago flooded Lucien's mind. Asterisk the third son of the Grand Duke's family, Lucien Vandy. 15 years ago, around this time, when I was working as a guard here, asterisk. Flashback. Because that day was etched deep in his mind. Because he died, Lucien looked straight at the man in front of him. Grand Duke Sigmund Vandy. He recalled the situation of this family. Asterisk he has 4 sons. And they are all half-brothers. Asterisk Lucien had some impression of them. Asterisk during the 10 years I worked here, I met the young masters and their mothers a few times. But, asterisk. Asterisk there's only one person who isn't in my memories. Lucien and his mother. I have absolutely no memory of ever meeting them. Asterisk now Lucien understood. His mother died early from illness. And shortly after I started working, Lucien, for some reason, the sparse information about the owner of this body appeared in his mind. Followed her, Lucien thought nervously. Asterisk at the time, I just thought the mother and son got sick and died, so I brushed it off. But the real reason was different. Asterisk. He also knew that his mother's death, his precarious position in the family, and so on, must have been too much for a child so young to bear. Asterisk what he chose was sleeping pills. At a dose just below the lethal amount. Asterisk. Lucien could sympathize with this body's situation. Asterisk he was just trying to grasp even a little bit of attention from the Grand Duke. However, during his seclusion that lasted over a year, he didn't account for his weakened body. Asterisk the sleeping pills he took suddenly came to mind. And when he couldn't withstand the effects of the pills, Lucien sighed and thought, died right on the spot. Asterisk to a son he hasn't seen for a year, I used to think such a reprimand was a bit harsh. But, asterisk he carefully looked into his eyes. Asterisk, at this point, it feels natural, doesn't it? Regardless of whether he's a Grand Duke or whatever. Asterisk. Lucien had some understanding of Sigmund. As long as he's a father with a child, there will definitely be a storm brewing in his heart. He swallowed hard nervously. But right now is not the time for me to consider other people's feelings. Sweat continuously dripped down Lucien's face. Asterisk I myself am about to die here. He said this is the last time. Asterisk he felt cracks forming beneath his feet. Asterisk this is clearly the final ultimatum. I can hear it. Asterisk. Lucien was terrified, imagining the sound of the ground shattering, the sound of his golden future crumbling. He thought nervously, right here, even just one word from me that displeases this Grand Duke. Lucien remembered the gossip of the priests around him. At the very least, I'll either be stuck as a priest in some remote monastery, bidding farewell to the secular world forever. The image of himself running away from bears flashed in his mind again. Asterisk, or dragged to the harsh north, enduring the freezing snow and wild beasts for the rest of my life. Living a life so terrible it couldn't get any worse. Asterisk. He gritted his teeth in anger. Asterisk, don't be ridiculous. I had to lose my head once to get this new life. This precious future. Asterisk Lucien silently resolved. I won't let anything ruin it. He calmly spoke up. You told me to speak, so I will speak. Lucien placed a hand on his chest and answered respectfully. First of all, for disgracing the Vandy family with my foolishness and causing you immense worry, I sincerely apologize. His change surprised Edwin greatly. This is my fault. I make no excuses. I am willing to accept any punishment from you. He rested his chin on his hand and growled, saying that now changes nothing. Lucien immediately interrupted. So now. His answer surprised Sigmund. Shouldn't you rejoice to your heart's content? He asked in astonishment. What? Sigmund expressed his confusion. What's past cannot be changed, right? Lucien respectfully replied. Therefore, instead of tying this life, which was pulled back from the brink of death, to the past any longer. His feet formed a V shape. Lucien clenched his fists and declared loudly, I intend to live earnestly for the future ahead. He flashed a bright smile. So, in the name of a father, not the Grand Duke, please give me a word of support. He listened attentively to Lucien. A child who made a mistake but sincerely repents before their parents, and the parents willingly open their arms to embrace that child. The atmosphere in the room seemed to brighten with his words. Isn't that the proper duty between father and son, according to the laws of heaven and earth? His eyes widened in shock. Unbelievable. Edwin stood from afar, watching Lucien intently and silently evaluating. Asterisk I can feel his aura has changed. But, asterisk, he remembered how he used to be. Is that really the person who always cowered in fear? This change in Lucien made Edwin suspicious. Is it really young Master Lucien? Sigmund remained silent, not answering. He looked up, straight into his eyes. Sigmund clenched his fists in anger. How dare you raise your voice at me about the duties of parents? He fell silent and let out a long sigh. Sigmund spoke up. It's true that if you live long enough, you see everything. Lucien placed a hand on his chest, taking it as a compliment. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Lucien clutched his chest and breathed a sigh of relief. Asterisk survived. As expected, instead of bowing clumsily, charging at him boldly was the right approach. Asterisk. His mind was lost in thought. Instead of being a mouse walking on eggshells, embrace the spirit of a wild dog that knows how to attack. Lucien knew. That is the Grand Duke Vandy I know. He spoke up. It seems that after returning from the dead, you've learned to be so bold that you no longer have any fear. He smiled, enjoying Sigmund's compliment. Very well. Since you yourself said you want to live properly, I'll ask you first. Lucien Vandy, what do you want to do from now on? Lucien closed his eyes and answered, First, I will fix this broken body. The tip of the commander's sword from his past life was etched deep in his mind. Then, Lucien boldly made his request. I will learn swordsmanship properly. He was surprised by his request. Swordsmanship? You. Lucien nodded and added, Yes. Although I have to overcome this weak body first. Sigmund listened silently as he rambled on. If I eat and rest properly, it should have some effect. He smiled in satisfaction. You certainly know how to talk. Sigmund's voice carried a hint of pride. Whether you're just making things up or not, I'll know just by watching. He turned to Edwin and said, Butler, give him that. He was wide-eyed with surprise upon hearing Sigmund's order. Instead of a few useless words right now, that will be more useful. He listened to him silently and nervously. Edwin bowed 90 degrees to receive the order. Understood, my lord. I will process it so it can be used immediately. Lucien was confused, question marks popping up. Asterisk that. What is that? Asterisk outside the mansion. Many people were busy moving things inside. Among them was a chest being brought down. The chest slightly opened, revealing a box of sparkling gold inside. Both he and Han were stunned and amazed by these things. This is ridiculous. Lucien stared blankly at the scene before him. Asterisk, is this what being a noble is like? Think about it. That's such a huge allowance. Asterisk. He picked up a few gold coins and thought. Asterisk, this is just for 1 month. With this much money. Asterisk, Lucien had his own calculations in mind. It's worth a try? To completely remodel this weak body, I can create that elixir. In the glass greenhouse, Edwin carefully followed behind Sigmund. He smiled, looking at Sigmund's back. This is the place the late Duchess loved most when she was alive. Edwin thought to himself. Asterisk, it's been a while since he came here. So him coming here must mean, asterisk. He remembered Lucien's face. Asterisk, because of the change in young Master Lucien. Even though he was alienated by the Grand Duke for a while. Asterisk, Edwin recalled the image of him and the late Duchess. Asterisk, he is the son of the Duchess he cherished the most. There's no way he would easily give up on the young master. Asterisk. Sigmund walked leisurely. He stopped in his tracks when he heard him say, pathetic. Edwin looked up at Sigmund, always darting his eyes around like he's afraid of something. His tone carried a hint of disgust. And trembling like a wild dog when I just raised my voice a little. He called out, my lord. Sigmund sighed and complained, that boy's attitude is so different from hers. So I only see him resembling his mother in appearance. Edwin's eyes widened in surprise when he heard his next words. But today, for the first time, the corners of Sigmund's mouth curled into a smile. I thought I might have been wrong. He spoke up. I'm sure you saw it too. That child looked me straight in the eye and stated his views. He bowed 90 degrees. Yes, he spoke without any hesitation. His attitude was very confident and resolute. Edwin then offered his opinion. Young Master Lucien has a warm heart and deep thoughts. So he only hesitates a little when compared to the other young masters. After all, the young master inherited your bloodline. Sigmund nodded and sighed. That's right. He looked up and continued. The trials placed on that child's shoulders from now on are not something that can be resolved with just a few empty words. He sighed and reported, my lord, there is one more issue. Sigmund asked in surprise, an issue? Edwin continued his report. You restored young Master Lucien's allowance, which had been cut off, but it has been confirmed that a portion of it is leaking outside. Upon investigation, I found that the second young master, Jodie Vandy, is involved in this. He continued clearly. Furthermore, he dismissed the head servant assisting the third young master and placed his own trusted aide in that position, clearly revealing his intention to monitor and suppress him. He gave his assessment. He is a capable child, but his mind is too narrow. Sigmund crossed his arms and said, I know he holds a deep grudge against the third son because of his maternal family's affairs, but I didn't expect him to be this stubborn. Edwin immediately asked for his opinion. Should we implement our own measures? He shook his head in refusal. No need, butler. Don't interfere in this matter. He stammered. However, wouldn't that be too harsh on the young master who has just taken his first steps? Edwin continued to ramble. It's just a cheap trick that wouldn't have worked anyway if he had properly managed the people around him. Even so, It's the price the third son has to pay for refusing to wake up for a whole year. Sigmund walked on, smirking in satisfaction. It's fine. Let's see how he handles this. If he can't even manage this much, there's no point in expecting anything from him. He had some hope for Lucien. Even if the Vandy family bloodline is the key, opening the door is something he must do himself. Time passed very quickly. A few days later, Hans stood gloomily outside the door, listening to the servants whispering. How many days has he been doing that? Is the young master locking himself in his room again? He frowned, looking angry as if he was annoyed about something. Hans shivered in fear and thought, today is the third day since the suspended allowance was sent back. He remembered being with Lucien and seeing the chest of gold. The young master said the allowance was restored because the conversation with the Grand Duke went well. But inside the chest, gold coins sparkled. Hans stood behind him, thinking carefully. Considering the relationship between the two, it couldn't have been easy. He had noticed Lucien's trembling body. The young master must have gathered all his courage to do that. Han was moved to tears. Now he's decided to move forward, even if he has to turn his back on his sorrow. But he didn't know that Lucien was trembling like that because he couldn't contain his joy. He blushed, his eyes wide as he looked at the pile of jewelry in front of him. With this much money, it's worth a try. Lucien was busy with his own calculations. To completely remodel this weak body, I can create that elixir. He returned to the room, filled with a fragrant scent. Lucien sweated as he looked at his assets in the desk drawer. He stood up straight, looking at the pile of things on the table behind him. That guy Han must be dying of curiosity. But seeing him still guarding the door strictly according to orders, he's quite loyal. Lucien thought to himself, starting with mixing tools that a Grand Duke's son has never touched in his life. He thought of a flower again. A type of earth herb. Terrible because it only grows under the moonlight, and its common uses haven't even been confirmed. Moonlight herb. I had to spend my entire allowance to buy it. Lucien had ordered Han. Han, it's not too late. Buy the moonlight herb. He silently mocked himself. Right now, I might look like a madman. Lucien calculated seriously. In just 1 year from now? He got even more excited thinking about it. Its price will increase tenfold. No, more than 20 times. Lucien blushed, smiling brightly. The price will skyrocket like crazy. He sighed calmly. Come to think of it, I have to praise that alchemist guild for having such guts. Lucien looked at the flowers he had hung on the branch by the window. At that time, whether it would succeed or not was still uncertain. Yet they bought up all the moonlight herb in the entire empire, didn't they? A gamble that decided the fate of the whole guild. Lucien reached out and picked up a bottle of red liquid on the table. Thanks to that boldness, he picked it up, calculating silently. An unprecedented elixir that shook the entire empire. They successfully created the drink of the gods, tear of the goddess. Lucien slowly opened it. Because they arrogantly dared to mention a god for an ordinary pharmaceutical product, they were even almost convicted of blasphemy. But, he excitedly inhaled the scent of the red liquid. Once its efficacy became known, everyone was busy praising it as if nothing had happened. The corners of Lucien's mouth curled into a smile. An axiom that had never been denied for over 1,000 years. A thought appeared in his mind. A martial artist's realm is determined the moment they are born. Lucien remained lost in his own thoughts. And that limit is an absolute rule no one can defy. Innate talent is destiny, and the spirit root is forever immutable. He continued to think. The thing that crushed that common sense into pieces was tear of the goddess. Lucien calculated silently. Just by drinking it, an incompetent person could become a skilled swordsman. He excitedly held the bottle of red liquid high. Of course, the one I made is far inferior to the original's effectiveness, and it's just a mass-produced version. But, Lucien slowly rolled up his sleeves. To improve a body broken to this extent, it's the best thing right now. He looked up and sighed. Be grateful for your luck, young noble. Lucien calculated silently again. Later, when an era of chaos engulfs the entire empire, the first thing to be burned down will be the Alchemist Guild. Because the formula for tear of the goddess is too dangerous as it unbalances the scales of power, he muttered softly, Asterisk, that's why this formula disappeared from the world. However, asterisk, Lucien seemed to see the image of himself in his past life. I gathered clues and made something similar, he silently decided. Asterisk, of course, most of the test subjects like me died from side effects. Anyway, enough talk. Asterisk, Lucien brought the bottle of red liquid to his mouth. Let's give it a try. Drop by drop, the liquid flowed into his body. From now on is crucial. Asterisk, the result of humans turning the power of nature into their own. Mana. It gradually blends into every muscle fiber. Depending on how well the process of circulation, spreading throughout the body, and then retracting operates, the quality and level of power a person can harness will be worlds apart. Asterisk. Lucien felt the source of mana flowing in his body. Right now, I've borrowed the power of Tear of the Goddess to forcefully expand the blocked pathways inside my body, he thought in confusion. But even if the pathways are opened, what is this situation? The body's resistance and the agonizing pain that should appear when receiving mana don't exist. Lucien silently evaluated this source of mana. On the contrary, it spreads without any hindrance, as if it's finding where it belongs. He opened his eyes wide awake. Even the body of a normal newborn baby has impurities that hinder circulation, Lucien suddenly realized. Don't tell me this guy is a genius? He felt as if he was sinking into his own ocean world. The golden color of the sunset covered the entire mansion. Han paced back and forth anxiously outside the door. He startled and stopped when he heard the sound of the door opening. As soon as Lucien opened the door, he asked, "While you were waiting, nothing happened, right, Han?" Han panicked and ran to his side, tears streaming down his face. "Young master, do you know how long you were in there?" He blushed, sobbing and sniffling. "I called but you didn't answer. And because you strictly told me not to enter no matter what." Han gradually calmed down and said, "I was so scared something bad had happened to you." He sniffled and stopped. "I was so worried." Lucien looked down with a gentle smile. There was something strange in his eyes. Han backed away in fear. "Young Master Lucien?" He panicked, running over to look all around Lucien's body. Asterisk, it's definitely the young master. But why do I feel like he's not him? Asterisk. He sighed helplessly at Han's attitude. This guy Han. Lucien looked at his bewildered face. Because he's observed Lucien closer than anyone else, he must have sensed that something has changed. He placed a hand on his chest. The body needs time and nutrition. Lucien felt the source of mana flowing in his body. So there are no major changes immediately. He could feel his heart beating strongly. But the problem is on the inside. Lucien smiled and thought, it's changing at an unimaginable speed. He was very satisfied with this body. It's all thanks to Lucien's innate constitution. Lucien looked down, his mouth curling into a slight smile. I'm certain now. He was also very hopeful. This person's potential is on par with the legends who once changed the world. Lucien excitedly touched his nose. If I do this right, I can easily surpass my golden age as a mercenary within a year. He spoke up, Han. Come to think of it, I owe you this opportunity. Sweating and bewildered, huh? What do you mean? Lucien placed his hands on his shoulders and said firmly, rewards and punishments must be clear. Han listened to him nervously. Listen closely, Han. I'll only say this once. Lucien's face darkened, grinning as he said, gather everything you have. Sell your underwear if you have to. And throw it all into this bet. He couldn't hide his excitement. I guarantee you a straight flight to the top. He stared blankly, helpless at Lucien's narcissistic demeanor. Let's rise together. In his heart, he carried a smug thought. Asterisk, I'm so jealous of you, Han. In my time, there were no kind nobles like me. Asterisk. Han was a bit scared of Lucien's attitude. Young master. Scene change. A week later, in a peaceful forest, he tagged along behind Lucien. Han looked sadly at him, happily humming a song. Lucien enjoyed the surrounding atmosphere with delight. Asterisk, so refreshing. Is it okay for life to be this easy? Asterisk, he thought of the meals he had eaten. Banquets served as regularly as clockwork. Lucien had gradually adapted to enjoying the servants' care. Rooms cleaned without me having to lift a finger. He had gotten used to it all. They even prepare a warm blanket and a soft bed for me. Lucien was moved to tears. Just recently, I had to endure going hungry. He stopped and looked at his two hands. Thanks to that, Not only can I fully focus on recovering, but I can also solve a problem. Lucien reached into his inner pocket. That has always weighed heavily on my mind. He was busy with his own thoughts again. Around this time, the existence of Jake, the one who used to be a guard for the Vandy family. Lucien frowned, thinking seriously. I confirmed with the captain of the guard that no one matching that description ever applied. He had returned to the place where he used to work, and the shift I used to work back then has been taken over by a complete stranger. Lucien clasped his hands, thinking to himself, actually, this is for the best. Meeting him wouldn't do any good and would only distract me. He turned pale, breaking into a cold sweat. And I don't have the confidence to meet my past self. I'd die of embarrassment. He looked worriedly at Lucien, who was trembling. He turned his head when he heard Han call, "Young Master Lucien." He asked cautiously, "Are you really going out there?" Han took the opportunity to say, "You said you'd never go near the training grounds because you hate them." Lucien put on a dumbfounded expression again. "I did." He growled angrily, "Yes, you did." Han sighed dejectedly. "Ever since the second young master gave you a hard time during training, you said you'd never go there again." He looked at Han's gloomy face and thought, seeing Han's reaction, I can roughly guess the situation. Swordsmanship is a mandatory skill for the Grand Duke's children. So this must have been the perfect opportunity for the second young master. Under the guise of swordsmanship training. Lucien remembered his own trembling figure. He must have instilled a fear of violence in Lucien since childhood. That painful memory has been etched into this body's mind. That's the perfect way to ensure he never sets foot in the dojo again. He replied, "I understand why you're reacting like that. But don't worry." Lucien thought, "That's in the past now." He stammered in confusion, "Young master." He turned his feet and walked away. Lucien said loudly and clearly, "You just need to trust and follow me." He led Han to the training grounds. Henrik questioned the man in front of him. "Is that true?" He confirmed again. "The third young master came here himself?" The blue-haired man nodded in confirmation. "Yes, I'm sure. He's observing the training hall with his personal servant." Henrik silently stroked his chin, thinking to himself, "What is that brat thinking, stepping in here?" He calculated carefully. There's no way he could have forgotten that day. "No, actually, this is even better. Henrik gave an order. "Go report this to him." His tone carried an extremely confident attitude. "I guarantee I'll beat him to a pulp when he gets here." Lucien stared blankly in amazement at the scene before him. This. I had high expectations, but this shatters them all. He looked around and silently evaluated. Not only is there an abundant reserve armory to use freely without worrying about breaking things. Lucien carefully observed and thought. There's also a vast space that doesn't restrict even the most powerful movements. He was shocked and amazed. "I can't believe one person owns a facility like this." Lucien quickly regained his composure. "If we had been trained in a place like this, maybe more of my boys would have survived." The two of them startled when they heard Henrik's voice. "Oh my eyes must be playing tricks on me." He spoke in a fake, sycophantic tone. "It really is the third young master. What a surprise. I can't believe my eyes." He looked at Henrik with wary eyes. "I still clearly remember how you tucked your tail and ran without looking back after your lesson with Sir Jodie a year ago." He couldn't hide his sly expression, like a little sheep chased by a wolf. Henrik's eyes then focused on Han standing next to Lucien. "Because of that, it seems you're still afraid of this place, huh?" He lowered his head in insecurity upon hearing his next words. "You even brought a servant to this sacred hall of warriors." Henrik crossed his arms, showing an arrogant attitude. "Long time no see. I, Henrik, would like to offer my opinion." He growled his greeting. "A year ago, I personally instructed you and the second young master. Do you remember?" Henrik recalled Lucien's trembling figure when holding a sword. That was a lot of fun. Back then, he had thoroughly enjoyed savoring that trembling figure. But the current him was different. The corners of Lucien's mouth curled into a smirk. Lucien didn't hide his sly smile at all. Look at this bastard. This is going to be very interesting. Chapter 6. Knights. The embodiment of honor and loyalty. Usually born with noble blood, they are accustomed to mastering both martial arts and etiquette from a young age. Only when they have achieved merit on the battlefield or through missions, and those achievements are duly recognized, do they officially receive the title of knight from their lord and fully experience the fulfillment of their lives. Lucien, however, had no interest at all. In the end, they're no different from hunting dogs in fancy clothes. He lowered his gaze. So, Lucien looked down at the legs that were constantly showing attitude. They have an obligation to show respect to the Lord who bestowed upon them both wealth and honor, and to his lineage as well. He observed Henrik from head to toe. Yet look at this arrogant attitude. Lucien could guess the reason. Lucien's low status in the family also contributes to it. Asterisk, there's a chain planted on his neck. It's not hard to figure out who the mastermind is. But relying on a backer to act is the most important factor here. Asterisk. He started calculating. If he opposes me, Lucien imagined all sorts of entertaining games. I'll reforge his mind with extreme training methods. He even intended to use Henrik as a throwing target. Asterisk, unfortunately, Lucien will have to scrap that idea. The Grand Duke won't just stand by and watch. Asterisk. He looked around the training ground. Asterisk, furthermore, knights are the core military strength and an important asset of the family. Unofficial punishment will only create unnecessary conflict. Asterisk, Lucien silently decided. Now is not the right time. He declared loudly. I find it foolish to avoid training just because of things that happened in the past. From now on, I will visit frequently to learn the forms. Lucien exuded a confident, arrogant demeanor. As you said, a year has passed. It must be hard for me to catch up, right? Henrik was surprised. Third young master, did you say forms? He clutched his stomach and laughed uproariously. You're really funny. It's too late now, yet you want to learn the forms. He looked surprised. Henrik didn't bother hiding the contempt in his eyes. You probably don't know, huh? Let me tell you. If you're past 15, you can consider it over. He rambled on. Forms are a secret art, and a legacy created by our ancestors. Just imitating the movements brings enlightenment, and it also trains the body. They are the essence of ancient wisdom. However, that only makes sense provided the mana pathways are clear. Because those pathways close at the age of 16, for you, it would just be physical torture. Henrik made a comparison. Forms without enlightenment are just an empty shell. No different from an empty dance. He dared to hurl insults at Lucien. Come to think of it, that actually suits you, doesn't it? Young master, why don't you take this opportunity to become the #1 dancer in the empire? But no one stepped forward to stop Henrik. That way, you save time and discover your true talent, right? The knights merely watched with cold eyes. Otherwise, you could spend your time gardening. He seemed to be representing everyone and oppressing him. Henrik held his head high, smug. Asterisk, look at him. Can't even say a word. Asterisk, he thought he had victory in the bag. Asterisk, from the start, the mana pathways closing at 16 is a blatant lie. Anyone could easily expose it with a little research. But it doesn't matter. Asterisk. Asterisk, later, I can just pretend I didn't know to smooth things over. Because I've already achieved my goal. Asterisk, Henrik thought Lucien was just a useless little lamb. A fool crushed by his own ignorance. Unable to utter a word of rebuttal. He was extremely confident. Asterisk, a bug mocked by subordinates, too scared to even twitch. By displaying that pathetic nature, exactly like a year ago, asterisk. He asked in a trembling voice, Sir Henrik, for some reason, it seems, this is a bit different from what I know. Lucien cowered in fear. The mana pathway's close at 25, not 16. So there shouldn't be any problem learning now. He burst out laughing. Are you sure about that? He humbly tried to speak. I think you're mistaken. Does Brother Jodie think so too? Henrik asserted firmly. Of course, that's common sense. He stroked his hair confidently. Asterisk, that's it. I mentioned him. He won't be able to retort anymore. Asterisk. Lucien suddenly raised his hands high. All right, I see. Even my brother says so. He grabbed Han's head. Han, it looks like the Vandy family is doomed. Lucien growled. You think so too, right? You must. Han backed away in fear. Young master, why am I getting dragged into this? He suddenly clutched his head and yelled. He's mistaken about a common fact that even a passing dog would know. And at his age, does that make any sense? Lucien yelled as if he wanted the whole mansion to hear. Who knows how many talents have been ruined because of this false knowledge? My eyes are getting blurry. He clutched his head in agony. I can't believe my brother is the master of an empty-headed fool like him. Henrik panicked, flailing his arms and legs. What are you talking about? Lucien thumped his chest. Don't interrupt me. If what this knight says is true, then this is a disgrace to the family, and clearly a crisis. Isn't that right? He threw him straight into the trap. Surely you're not planning to deceive me, the son of the Lord, are you? The entire training ground was dead silent. Henrik broke into a cold sweat. What do you mean by that? Me deceive you? Lucien continued to apply pressure. Forget what I just said. I only misspoke because I couldn't believe this situation. He smiled maniacally. There's no way a knight of the Vandy family would do something so petty, right? He backed away in panic. Of course, Lucien immediately agreed. Right, I knew it. He immediately escalated the issue. If so, this is a problem we cannot take lightly. Lucien chuckled inwardly. I'll show you what happens when you run your mouth in front of me. He continued speaking. However, it seems you don't realize the gravity of the problem. Henrik panicked. What? Lucien suddenly acted magnanimous. If you simply wanted to humiliate me, I could let it go. He gestured wildly. The fact that you and the others don't have a good attitude towards me is my fault for forgetting my responsibilities and wasting time. Lucien acted so deeply that he shed a few tears. How could I blame you for that? He asserted firmly. However, aside from that, if you, a knight, and him, a pillar of the Grand Duchy, are hindering the recruitment of talent with false knowledge, then that is something I absolutely cannot ignore. The other knights stood there dumbfounded, listening. This will fracture the military strength of the Vandy knights. And to be clear, it could become a danger to the safety of the people in the territory. Han was moved to tears. Lucien was full of righteousness. In the name of the one who bears the name Vandy, my indignation is completely justified. He rejoiced inwardly. Excellent. Lucien put immense pressure on him. Sir Henrik, do you understand the gravity of this matter now? He poked Henrik lightly in the chest. You'd better prepare yourself. Lucien glared warningly. I will report this to father and request an internal purge. He gritted his teeth, breaking into a cold sweat. Wait. The guy who used to tremble just hearing his name. Why is he making such a big deal out of this? Henrik turned pale with fear. No. Has this brat always been like this? Acting weak like a little lamb? He had clearly seen his position, but is actually a wolf. The sound of steady footsteps echoed. Jodie asked, What's all the commotion? Henrik startled and turned around. Sir Jodie. Lucien smirked, looking over. He appeared. Right on time. He clicked his tongue in disgust. You again. Lucien Vandy. Second young master, Jodie Vandy. The atmosphere seemed to freeze on the spot. Henrik panicked and ran over. Second young master. I'll explain. He tried to speak. Actually, the situation is... Jodie held out a hand to stop Henrik. Stop. His eyes showed a hint of amusement. You don't need to explain. Jodie growled coldly. Because I saw your insolent behavior with my own eyes. He seemed to stamp a death sentence on him. Being spun around by a brat not even half your age. I am truly disappointed. Jodie clenched his fists. Henrik, fix your expression. He was extremely displeased. If you want to make things even more difficult for me. Jodie approached Lucien. Han fearfully grabbed his clothes. Young master. It seems he's very angry. Lucien smirked in amusement. His expression is quite interesting too. The second son of the Vandy family, Jodie Vandy. A worthy successor to a traditional noble family. Truly a noble among nobles. I heard he recruits people from the outside because his influence is overshadowed by the eldest young master. He claims that he brought them in himself. If he finds them useful, he'll try to turn the tables. Lucien smiled obediently. Hello, brother Jodie Vandy. He thought to himself, long time no see, second young master. Lucien showed concern. How have you been? Jodie scolded in disgust. You idiot. He looked blank, not understanding. Huh? What do you mean by that all of a sudden? He maintained his grumpy face. The words you said to Henrik, I heard them all. Jodie smirked calculatingly. You dare to do something that affects the dignity of the Vandy family. Lucien shrugged helplessly. Could you explain it more clearly so I can understand? What do you mean by affecting the dignity? He glanced back. It seems this mistake has been going on for a long time. Ever since Henrik returned from the front lines, Jodie delivered his verdict. Using my name and causing unnecessary chaos is clearly a major flaw. He cannot escape that responsibility. He shook his head. However, I have no intention of reprimanding him for this. How much blood he has shed for the Vandy family all this time. Because I clearly understand the value of that loyalty. Jodie frowned, looking down again. Unlike you. He publicly humiliated Lucien. Furthermore, someone who couldn't endure swordsmanship training and ran away. Do you think you have the right to blame him? Jodie arrogantly ordered, Lucien Vandy. First, you must learn to respect knights. He looked back. Because of them, Jodie elevated the role of the knights. Vandy exists. He deliberately guided public opinion. Everyone, I apologize on his behalf for the chaos today. He is still young and inexperienced, so please be generous and forgive him. Jodie smiled maniacally. I will take special care of this foolish little brother. Lucien understood the problem. You want to play it like this? His brain works fast. He analyzed the situation. Even though the one I was really cursing was him. Lucien recognized his cunning. Not only is he subtly provoking that I insulted the knights, but he's also saving face for himself. He smiled faintly. Fine. I'll let you talk freely. Lucien spoke up, as expected of my brother. Jodie immediately became wary. He clenched his fist and placed it over his heart. Even if there's a misunderstanding between Sir Henrik and me, you have the right to scold me for daring to insult you. Lucien was endlessly moved. But instead of doing that, you bestowed such valuable knowledge. He started hurling harsh words. Calling your head a hat rack or an empty shell wouldn't be wrong. Han turned pale with fear. Young master, please shut up. Jodie was getting madder and madder. Anyway, I'm very ashamed for saying those shameless words. Lucien acted as if he was truly enlightened. Thanks to your mercy, I've learned something new today. The knights watched in a daze. Han, I must record my brother's teachings. Paper and pen aren't enough. It must be written on the finest silk. He had calculated everything. Instead, through you, I will erase Lucien's weak image and engrave a clear presence in everyone's minds. Lucien was extremely smug. That the third young master of the past is no more. He strode forward. So I'll be leaving now? You'll allow it, right? Lucien growled a warning. Anyway, there's no benefit for either of us to stay any longer. Jodie was furious, on the verge of going crazy. You bastard. You really don't know what fear is, do you? Do you think you can just leave like that? He casually looked up. Did you forget? Lucien borrowed his father's authority. Father is watching me very closely. I have nothing to lose. But brother. Saying that, he turned his back and walked away. Then I'll take that as a yes. Lucien left in glory. I'm leaving, brother Jodie. He smugly pulled Han along. Run. Han was pale with fear. Young master. Henrik broke into a cold sweat. Sir Jodie. He carefully spoke up. Is it okay to let him go back like that? The air around Jodie seemed to freeze. Chilling to the bone. The two of them walked to the mansion together. Han followed submissively behind Lucien. He fearfully glanced back. Han kept worrying. Young master, is this really okay? He was restless. You know Sir Jodie's temper better than anyone. Han cried miserably. He definitely won't let this go. He fell to his knees, shedding tears. Even if we luckily escape this time, I'll definitely be snatched away by that mustached knight without anyone knowing. Lucien was fed up. I get it. Calm down. But he didn't deny it. That's right. Only those who have endured that temper would understand. When an incompetent superior exaggerates everything and then pretends not to know how terrible that feeling is, he smiled and assured him confidently. That won't happen. Let's go. Lucien firmly asserted. A mediocre knight wouldn't dare do that. And I won't let that happen either. He reached out to help Han up. You've endured a lot because of me all this time, Han. Lucien felt a bit guilty. If the master is foolish, the subordinate is the one who suffers the most. He understood very well. You're also my personal servant, so you must have suffered even more. Han wiped away his tears. Young master. Lucien's eyes shone brightly. I promise you one thing. From now on, he made a commitment. I will never let my foolish actions cause my people to be despised or tremble in fear again. The bright sun shone down on the massive mansion. Han still tagged along behind Lucien. His steps were hurried, accompanied by his thoughts. I wondered why it was so quiet after leaving the training ground. Lucien thought nervously, from what I know, that Jodie guy isn't the type to sit still and take a beating. He clenched the paper in his hand in anger. Turns out, he set up such a despicable move. Lucien gritted his teeth in indignation. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. He, behind him, was also angry on Lucien's behalf. That's right, young master. This absolutely cannot be easily overlooked. He frowned and growled. Are you ready, Han? Han huffed and said loudly, Ready, young master. Lucien lost his temper and vented his anger. How dare he touch my pocket money? He blushed with determination. And my monthly salary too. It seemed Lucien had a rosy dream. It all started with the budget estimate that arrived today. I can buy more moonlight herb. I can also buy all the necessary things. He had been extremely excited then. Thank goodness my pockets are full. Lucien blushed in delight as he opened the letter. It should have been like that. But his smile vanished instantly when he read the contents of the letter. Lucien lost his composure and dropped the letter to the floor. The letter brought the news. Summary: Lucien Vandy's pocket money cut by 75%. Han's monthly salary cut by 30%. He gritted his teeth in anger. That's right. That damn young master messed with my pocket money. Through the head made he planted in my annex. Lucien angrily placed his hand on the door in front of him. Embezzlement, even in noble society, is a felony, punishable by extreme torture. The door opened along with his thoughts. Yet he still dared to do something so absurd. It's because there was a loophole on my side for him to exploit. Lucien glared at the servants in the room. After the third Duchess, Lucien's mother, passed away, Lucien delegated the management of the budget to someone else. Lucien looked at Jenny, not the young maid. She was an older maid. That's Dana, the head maid, the one who had been with him for many years. Lucien looked at Jenny, not the young maid. She stepped forward to greet the two of them. This is the first time I've had the honor of meeting you in person and greeting you like this. Jenny placed a hand on her chest and smiled gently. It's a pleasure to meet you. I am Jenny, the newly appointed head maid replacing Madame Dana. They remained silent, listening to her. When I took the position, I intended to bring the paperwork to present to you. But at that time, it seemed the young master had absolutely no intention of stepping out of his room. Jenny's tone was not friendly at all. That period of being lost is over. Han yelled angrily at her attitude. What kind of tone are you using with the young master? He spoke up to remind him. Calm down, Han. She's not wrong. But he still wanted to demand justice for Lucien. Young master. He waved his hand and smiled gently. All right, let's skip the trivial matters. Lucien clenched the letter in his hand. The important thing right now is something else. Jenny remained calm in the face of his questioning tone. I'll ask straight out. Lucien held up the letter and questioned. Did you draw up this budget estimate? She calmly covered her mouth and chuckled. Jenny burst out laughing and asked, No wonder you called me here. So it was because of the budget estimate. Yes, I was the one who drew it up. She calmly placed a hand on her chest and said, The young master delegated authority to the former head maid. I just took over and worked exactly according to what was handed over. Jenny changed her attitude instantly. But I'm a bit confused. I work hard, yet I'm suddenly interrogated like this. She acted as if this wasn't a big deal. Originally, this was something the young master had to do himself. He frowned, thinking to himself, right. I figured you'd use that as an excuse. This is clearly Jenny's mistake, but she doesn't want to argue. All right, I understand that point. I suppose it can't be helped. But he didn't let it go. Even so, there's something I find unacceptable. Lucien confronted her directly. Most of the money my father provided was allocated to increasing the servants' wages. His next words made the surrounding maids flinch. Considering how long they've suffered due to my negligence, we can see it as compensation. Lucien cleared his throat and continued. However, why is it that Han's salary wasn't just not increased, but was actually cut? Jenny remained unfazed by his questioning. Don't you think that's a bit too obvious? She replied calmly. Oh, did something like that happen? I must have overlooked it. There are so many things to keep track of when managing the household. Jenny turned to the maids behind her. My workload is overwhelming. Everyone here can attest to that. Her final words sent a shiver of fear through them all. Right. They answered hesitantly. Why yes. Ms. Ginny has been especially busy lately, so? Their answer did not satisfy him. From now on, we'll provide even better support for Ms. Ginny. Lucien was tired of this outcome. He turned to leave, waving his hand dismissively. Let's go, Han. Han was startled. Young master? Just like this. Lucien clenched his fists, grinding his teeth. This is my body, but my own hands and feet only listen to someone else's commands. He stopped at the door. Lucien's voice was a low warning. Headmaid, I have one last question for you. Answer it very carefully. He glanced back at Jenny. Do you know who the true master you're supposed to obey is? She spoke to him as an equal. About that, I'll have to ask Master George first. At the same time, in a small, dark alley, the shadows swallowed his thoughts. An organization that has rotted from within must be uprooted to survive. He stopped in front of a tavern. And that's exactly my current situation. Han followed Lucien, bewildered. Young master, didn't you say we were going fishing to calm your mind? He looked around the area warily. But this place, it's so noisy with all these people. Hey, you son of a bitch. Are you even trying to fight? I bet my whole month's salary on you today. The sounds of fists hitting flesh mingled with the shouting. That's it. Harder. Beat him to a pulp. Lucien asked excitedly, don't you feel it? He watched the wrestling match with fascination. The feeling that you're about to catch a big fish. Lucien walked over to the bar. The bartender, John, spoke as he wiped a glass. This ain't a place for kids like you to be hanging around. Scram before you get hurt. He froze when Lucien placed a bag of silver on the counter. Lucien sat down and took off his hood. Such a difficult casino. He asked in a sharp voice. Well, aren't you going to serve a customer? Lucien recalled Jenny's smug face. There are a few reasons why I haven't dealt with the head made more forcefully yet. He thought calmly and carefully. First, Jenny isn't just a simple head maid. As John fumbled beside him, Lucien continued his thoughts. Asterisk, she's the daughter of the wet nurse who raised George since he was a baby. If I interfere recklessly, things will only get worse. Asterisk. His train of thought continued. Second, the chain of command on Lucien's side is more chaotic than I imagined. He waved the bartender away. Given that the situation is beyond normal, it requires a suitable solution. A smile crept onto Lucien's lips as he remembered Sigmund's silhouette. And finally, there's no way the Grand Duke doesn't know about this. It suddenly dawned on Lucien. In other words, cleaning up this mess is also part of the test. He sat down and sighed. If that's the case, I'll have to prove myself to him. Lucien looked at the messy cards on the table. He leaned down and picked up a few. Lucien shuffled the cards in his hand with amusement. A thought sparked his excitement. And while I'm at it, I might as well earn a little spending money. The room fell silent as Lucien flipped over 2 cards. The onlookers whispered among themselves. How many hands has he won in a row? Isn't he a little too good? His opponent is supposed to be a seasoned player, too. The black-haired man trembled in disbelief. I fold. Lucien toyed with a chip in his hand. Folding so soon? The game was just starting to get fun. He smiled provocatively. Why not stay and play a little longer? The man refused, terrified. No, thank you. I think it's best if I leave right now. Han held his head, his voice trembling as he watched the scene. Since when did the young master have skills like this? Lucien propped his feet on the table, a challenging look on his face. Is there no one else for the next round? I came here because I heard the rumors, but is this all there is? He glanced at the pile of chips on the table. After I've cleaned them all out like this? Lucien nudged a stack of chips with his foot. When the door suddenly opened, he knew. Asterisk, it's time. He has to show himself now. Asterisk. Lucien turned his head toward the entrance. He's here. The man stepped inside and adjusted his clothes. A confident smile played on Hugo's lips. He walked up to Lucien, his voice a challenge. I didn't realize such an important person was visiting. Please forgive my delayed greeting. Hugo clasped his hands behind his back and introduced himself grandly. I am Hugo, the manager of this establishment. He snapped his fingers, giving an order to a waiter. The blonde waiter placed a hand on his chest and announced to the other guests. I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. Due to unforeseen circumstances, we will be closing for the day. As the customers left, the waiters bowed. The next time you visit, we will be sure to treat you generously. When only the two of them were left, Hugo spoke. This may inconvenience the other guests, but it's a small price to pay. His voice was low and confident. As long as young Master Lucien can enjoy his time in comfort. Lucien wasn't intimidated in the slightest, laughing in response. It's been a while since I've been out. You've got a good eye. Then again, you'd need that kind of intuition to make a living in this business. Hugo stood tall, looking down at him. Again, I apologize for my tardiness. Lucien replied coolly, don't worry about it. I just came here for a change of pace. Hugo glanced at the pile of chips on the table. But this is truly astonishing, young master. It's been a long time since I've seen a guest win a stack of money this high. Hugo nodded, making an offer. If it's not too much trouble, would you mind if I were your opponent? Lucien was intrigued by the offer. The star player himself? Hugo smiled fawningly. Of course, I can't compare to you, young master. But as the manager here, I've picked up a few tricks. His demeanor shifted instantly. At the very least, it should be enough to kill some time, don't you think? Han, sweating and trembling, whispered in Lucien's ear, young master, let's just go home. Please, you've already won so much money. He tried his best to persuade him. I have a very bad feeling about that man. I've met many frightening people in the palace, so I know. Han was terrified when he looked into Hugo's blazing red eyes. That gaze, it's truly one of a kind. The second, Lucien looked up at Han's fearful expression. This Han, he's not just a personal servant for show. He frowned, considering. It's only natural that he'd realize it. Lucien looked at Hugo's fake expression. Information about Hugo surfaced in his mind. Asterisk Hassan Hugo. A name destined to one day shake the underworld. Asterisk. He already had a reputation in gangster circles. Asterisk his journey began in the dark alleys of the city. Everyone had heard of Hugo's notoriety. Even though all he had was brute strength, nothing could stop him. A man armed with both violence and cunning. Asterisk. Lucien had also heard. Asterisk, he quickly rose to power. His name didn't stop at this city. And after extending his reach into gambling, smuggling, and even contract killing, he became the king of the night, ruling the underworld of 5 territories. Asterisk. He had heard the stories. Later, using the impending division of the empire as a stepping stone, he declared himself a baron and was reborn as one of the empire's warlords. Lucien calmly looked at the Hugo sitting before him and assessed him. Asterisk for now, he's still a rookie. But just as Hans said, he's a very dangerous man. Asterisk. A cunning smile spread across his face. Lucien made his resolve. And today, I've come to take this place for myself. He looked at the cards on the table. Lucien spoke up. As for the game, how about a simple hand of cards? Hugo agreed immediately. Of course. Also, I won't set a maximum betting limit. Hugo maintained the fake smile on his face. Because I can't let the young master, who came all this way, feel bored. While Han's face paled in horror, Lucien cheered excitedly. That's more like it. I've finally found someone who understands me. Hugo replied with a sycophantic tone. The honor is all mine, young master. Inwardly, Hugo was sizing him up. A typical pampered young master who only knows how to act tough because of his family's name. He watched the cards in the dealer's hands and thought, he doesn't even realize that his words just now were his own death sentence. Hugo was busy with his own calculations. The timing couldn't be better. His face darkened as he schemed. My own card sharp getting cleaned out wasn't part of the plan, but the dealer nodded discreetly, seeing Hugo's signal under the table. Hugo made a biased judgment. A brat like him will only fall deeper the more he loses. Hugo grinned to himself. I'll devour you until there's not a single bone left, you carefree little whelp. Lucien spoke up unexpectedly. Oh my, where's my head today? Hugo was surprised by his reaction. Is there a problem? Lucien smiled in return. Not at all. But before we begin, I have a question, if I may. Hugo remained calm. Of course, young master. I will answer you truthfully. Lucien propped his chin on his hand. This may be our first time meeting, but I've taken quite a liking to you. Lucien glanced around the room. You can tell a lot about a leader by the attitude of his subordinates. He offered his assessment. Although this place operates illegally, managing an establishment of this size is no easy feat. Lucien got straight to the point. If you had crossed the line, we would have heard about it long ago and wiped you out. Hugo bowed his head. I know my place and always ensure I don't cause trouble for my superiors. Lucien chuckled. No need to be so tense. Even though I'm from the Vandy family, we're not that rigid. Lucien leisurely looked at his cards. Therefore, I would appreciate it if you answered honestly. When will the regulations begin mass production? Hugo calmly replied. What are you talking about? Lucien's next words made him jump. Come on, that thing you're making in Vesca. Not just Hugo, but the entire room fell into a tense silence as Lucien spoke. I'm talking about that illegal hallucinogenic drug. Lucien's demeanor was dangerous. His bluntness chilled the air. I'm talking about illegal hallucinogenic drugs. The two servants standing by were shaken. Han's jaw dropped in astonishment. Hugo was also stunned for a moment by the sudden accusation. Only after a moment did he manage a clumsy response. Young master, what are you talking about? Hallucinogenic drugs? What are those? As coins were stacked one by one, Lucien continued to tear away his facade. Hey, you heard me clearly. Why are you asking again? Lucien rested his chin on his hand, a smile still on his lips. You were commissioned by the Marquis Logren's family, weren't you? He emphasized each word, putting pressure on the man opposite him, to destabilize Vandy by distributing illegal opiates. Lucien waved his hand dismissively. I never thought a marquis would issue such cheap orders. There are lines you shouldn't cross. He said his name directly. Don't you agree, Hugo? Before Hugo could react, Lucien pressed on with his argument. No, in this case, it's you who's more impressive. Where did you find the gall to do something like that right in Vandy territory? The more he spoke, the more powerful and terrifying his voice became. The moment this all comes to light and you're caught, everyone associated with Vandy will tear you to shreds. Everyone, without a single exception. Hugo's mind must be in turmoil right now, Lucien thought. Asterisk failure means death. The entire plan has been completely exposed. Asterisk. Asterisk, and in front of the Vandy family, of all people. The worst possible opponent. How could this be? This wasn't supposed to be exposed for another 2 years. By then, the Grand Duke would have received reports of opiates spreading through the territory, asterisk, and raided the base. But by then, Hugo would have already fled the city, asterisk. My experience of being played for a fool is finally coming in handy. Back in the conversation, Hugo finally spoke. Young master, there seems to be a misunderstanding. Lucien leaned back in his chair to listen. A misunderstanding? Hugo tried to feign trembling from being wrongly accused. I'm just a humble man earning a few coins in this small shop. Me dealing in opiates? Hugo even raised his voice in feigned outrage. Someone must be jealous of me and spreading these baseless rumors. If you give me the chance, I'll expose the person who started them myself. Obviously, Lucien was unmoved. You say they're baseless rumors? He continued to astound Hugo with what he knew. In that case, is the grain mill you're backing also just an ordinary shop? And this secret tunnel is just an emergency exit leading out of the castle, is it? I'll ask one last time. Lucien's eyes were cold and sharp. What stage are you at? At that moment, Hugo was completely powerless. His mind began to fill with panicked thoughts. Asterisk, he knows about the front and the secret passage? If he knows that much, making excuses is useless. Asterisk, Hugo's knuckles began to tighten. In that case, the next second, a murderous intent flashed across his face. Should I kill him? At the same time, John had stealthily pulled out a small, sharp knife. He tucked it into the back of his waistband, covering it with his shirt. Hugo thought to himself, a noble brat without any guards is an easy one-shot kill. Of course, none of this escaped Lucien's notice. Think carefully before you act. He maintained a calm expression as he warned. Because the price for this bet is your own life. Lucien emphasized his words, repeating them like a warning bell. You must be careful, considering how you climb to your position. Hearing this, Hugo seemed to snap out of his foolish, murderous impulse. Asterisk, you stupid bastard. What kind of idiotic thought was that? Attacking a member of the Vandy family? Asterisk, images of himself being restrained and tortured on an iron rack flashed through his mind. I'd rather find my own way to die. Hugo's eyes squeezed shut, his brow furrowed. Then, he decided to kneel. He told himself, I have to survive at all costs. With utmost reverence, Hugo carefully confessed. Please spare my life. He began to play the victim. I believe you must have a reason for coming to find me personally. A slight, intrigued smile touched Lucien's lips at those words. Otherwise, my head would have rolled long ago. Hugo cast aside all his pride and begged, "If you tell me to be a dog, I'll be a dog. Tell me to bark, I'll bark. Tell me to crawl, I'll crawl." The other male servants also knelt when they saw him. "Please spare my life." The entire casino bowed their heads and pleaded, "Please, spare our lives, young master." Lucien's hand reached down to touch the stack of silver coins. He casually flicked one. Then, Lucien slowly stood up. "Well, keeping a dog around isn't so bad." He continued, "I could use a few lackeys to order around." Thinking his life was spared, Hugo quickly raised his head with a fawning smile. "Thank you, my lord. Whatever you command, I will do anything." However, Lucien's tone didn't sound like he was going to spare them. "But hey," he crouched down in front of Hugo, "isn't that a little boring? You're not the type to be satisfied with just being a hunting dog." Lucien's hand rested on Hugo's shoulder. "Hey, Hugo." The question he asked startled the man. "Have you ever wanted to try being a knight?" Time seemed to stop for a moment. His words echoed in Hugo's mind. "Do I want to become a knight?" Hugo lowered his head slightly, his mind in turmoil. "I once did. It was a dream I craved desperately. But in the end, I had to give it up." As time went on, reality became clearer. He thought of all the times he had given his all. No matter how much I honed my skills, and no matter how I risked my life for my master. In the end, I was just a useful tool for the high and mighty nobles. Because this damn lowly birth of mine would never change, no matter what I did. That question echoed in Hugo's head again. He gritted his teeth. "Do I want to become a knight?" Suddenly, Hugo slammed his head to the ground with a loud thud. He had made his decision. If I can become a knight, I'd sell my very soul. He remained in that position, wanting to confirm it one more time. "Can I really do it?" Lucien declared with the utmost seriousness and respect. "I swear on the honor of the Vandy family." He placed a hand on his knee to stand up. "In the future, if you have the qualities and honor to not be ashamed of yourself, then that trivial status of yours will no longer be a stumbling block." An aura seemed to emanate from Lucien. He held out his hand and called his name, Hugo. To the man's still disbelieving face, he asked a question that pierced his soul. "Don't you want to live as a human being, instead of a tool?" Scene change. A few days later, at the magnificent palace, amidst the curiosity and questions of all the servants, Lucien's voice rang out. "Let me introduce everyone." In the room, with numerous members present, he officially announced, "This is a talented new recruit from outside." Lucien comfortably propped his feet on the table, hands behind his head, and glanced to the side. "Go on, introduce yourself." Immediately, Hugo stood at attention, hands clasped behind his back, and spoke. "I am Hugo. Starting today, I will be assisting the young master." Hugo smiled and continued, "I look forward to learning from all of you." The vast room was silent. Lucien, with his feet on the table, looked at the servants before him. He clapped once, breaking the silence. "All right, now that the introductions are over." Lucien made a request with a somewhat mischievous look in his eyes. "Call the head maid here." Mark hesitated, stunned. "The head maid? Why all of a sudden?" Lucien pointed a finger in a vague direction. "I've brought in a new servant. Shouldn't we introduce him to her?" He brought up the incident with Jenny in a mocking tone. "We can't have a repeat of last time's chaos, can we? So, I have no choice but to report this to our busy head maid." Lucien thought with weary frustration, I knew it. That same reaction again, He looked at the restless, murmuring crowd. This place can't be disciplined through ordinary means. "Everyone, don't make a move. Calm down. That's right. Do you want to get into trouble?" Well, their attitude is understandable. In their eyes, Lucien is nothing but a rotten rope. If that's the case, I'll have to teach them a proper lesson. On the neat table sat a few ordinary items. Mark gathered all his courage and stood up to speak to Lucien. "Young master, please consider our situation as well." He tried to persuade him. "Don't you know? The head maid is extremely devoted to Master George. What fault could we possibly have?" As soon as he finished, the surrounding servants chimed in. "That's right. Please understand. Why are you deliberately trying to stir up trouble?" Han bit his lip, listening to the harsh words swirling around him. "We just want to live peacefully like before." He suddenly shouted, warning the servants. Everyone, get a grip. Have you all forgotten your duties? Han's face flushed with anger as he questioned them. The master of this place is young Master Lucien. Hugo watched Han trying to restore Lucien's authority, not the second young master, George. The next second, Hugo suddenly spoke up. Senior Han, leave this to me. He looked at the ungrateful crowd and sneered. Your golden words are wasted on this lot. Hugo bowed to Lucien. Young master, I understand what needs to be done. Lucien replied with a satisfied tone, quick-witted. Hugo accepted the compliment, his face turning cold and murderous. For those who don't know their place, the way to instill loyalty is very simple. Hugo looked at Lucien again, seeking permission. However, this method will be a bit rough, so I'd like to ask for your permission. Lucien looked at him with a mixture of approval and excitement. Asterisk as expected, his mind is sharp. This is why I recruited Hugo. And Lady Luck is smiling on me. Hugo is still in the early stages of creating his poison. If he gets any further, not even I will be able to control him. Asterisk. Cutting off his thoughts, Lucien walked over and patted Hugo's shoulder a few times. Of course, you have my permission. That's exactly what I want. He looked at the servants as if they were prey. Don't worry. Go ahead and open their eyes. Hugo responded with a look. As you command. He walked up to Mark in front of everyone. Mark looked at the large man before him, unable to hide his fear. What is he going to do? Mark looked tiny next to someone like Hugo. Asterisk, he looks so scary up close. He looks like a criminal, doesn't he? Asterisk. Then he comforted himself with self-made excuses. Asterisk, don't be scared. He's probably just some street thug. Asterisk, he looked at Hugo with arrogant and haughty eyes. Listen here. I'm advising you as someone who understands the situation here. You'd better watch your words. Hugo glared at the man spouting nonsense in front of him. Do you have any idea how ruthless Master George is? The times have long since changed. Veins of anger bulged on Hugo's clenched fist. You're not stupid enough to bet your life for a few meals, are you? When Mark finished, Hugo, radiating a murderous aura, replied flatly, what bland last words. The unclear statement left Mark standing there, bewildered. What? Just as he was about to speak again, his face met a painful punch. You were saying? Hugo's blow was merciless, and even stronger than it looked. The surrounding servants went from shocked to horrified. Mark was sent flying like a bird. In contrast to Han's wide-eyed astonishment, Lucien was thoroughly enjoying the spectacle. Mark struggled on the ground as if he'd lost half his life. One side of his face was frighteningly swollen. It seemed several of his teeth had been knocked out. The servants, regaining their senses, immediately rushed forward to condemn him. What are you doing? This is assault. Even if you were brought here by the young master, you think you have the right to do this? Hugo replied without a hint of fear. My authority is more than enough. He gave a cold laugh, looking at the others like they were timid street rats. Because I have experience educating crazy bastards. The teacup on the table was still steaming. Mark seemed not to have fully recovered from the blow. The large room suddenly became noisy. Ginny was escorted inside by two people. Let go of me. I said let go. She was still threatening them. You think you'll get away with this? One of the escorts shouted angrily. Shut up and follow me. Still don't get the situation, do you? Ginny's face was red and swollen on one side, but her words were still arrogant. How dare you shout in my face? She relentlessly warned the people escorting her. You will definitely pay for what you've done today. The next second, she was met with the terrifyingly silent scene in the room. The servants in the room were all pale as ghosts. Then, a voice announced, Young Master Lucien, as per your order, we have brought head maid Jenny. After that, the room fell silent once more. Lucien stood before a window flooded with light. He turned slightly, then waved his hand with a cheerful smile. Ah, you're here. Lucien spoke lightly, as if he hadn't seen what was happening. I only told them to call you here. Ginny gritted her teeth, trembling, but couldn't speak a word against him. But it seems everyone was a little overzealous. She screamed at the top of her lungs, thinking he couldn't do anything to her. What is the meaning of this? Do you think you'll get away with this? Ginny struggled to break free from the two guards. If you think I'm scared, you're dead wrong. Master George won't let this slide. She threatened Lucien boldly. If you stop now, I'll settle today's matter quietly. He laughed, finding it refreshing. Settle this? Who said you'd be the one settling anything? Then, his slender hand reached for a whip on the table. He tapped it lightly against his palm and said calmly, "Things are just getting started." Jenny was startled by Lucien's next words. "Headmaid, if you have any last words, speak your mind now." He looked at her with deadly eyes and pronounced his judgment. "Because today, you will surely die. Execution. It has always been the clearest and most effective method of deterrence. It has legitimacy, a clear target, and no ambiguity in who is being punished. Meaning, there's no need to replace everyone from the inside out." Lucien calmly walked up to Jenny. She froze on the spot, still in shock. She bit her lip, fear evident on her face. Lucien's gaze never left the woman for a second. "This is all it takes." His hand tightened around the whip. "Including today, I will make the Grand Duke witness with his own eyes that the useless third son of the past is no more." Then, he gestured to a man standing nearby. The man understood immediately and rushed forward, forcing Jenny down. Her knees hit the floor with a dull thud. She was forced to kneel before Lucien like a loser. Even then, Jenny still challenged him. "Young master, I advise you to think carefully before you make your decision. Did you just say you wanted to kill me?" Her eyes, like a venomous snake's, stared at Lucien. "If you harm me, even a single scratch, do you think Master George will let this go?" She played all her cards like a protective charm. "Above all, my mother was the one who raised Master George from infancy, and I, as the wet nurse's daughter, am like a sister to him." Lucien looked down at her with a superior gaze. "Is that all you have to say? This could be your last chance. You still want to rehash those same old lines?" He looked down at her with deadly eyes and whispered, "If all you can do before you die is scream my brother's name, isn't that a bit pathetic? Do you have any other backup plans? Go on, try them out." Jenny still clung to her last lifeline. "I just want to say that Master George." Lucien cut her off in frustration. "Headmaid, you seem to be gravely mistaken. I have more than enough reasons to kill you. From insubordination and defying orders to embezzlement and incitement." He let out each word like a cold wind sweeping over Jenny. "And another thing, don't think that just because you grew up on the same milk, you can forget your place. You think that Master George you keep screaming about can save you." Lucien paid his brother little mind. "At most, he'll give me a slap on the wrist. But if father intervenes, even he can't do anything." He replied with a smile that was both cunning and cold. "He might even think I'm reasonably disciplining an unruly horse. Who knows? He might even reward me for it." Each word was like a dagger to Jenny's heart. He stood up straight and spoke clearly. "George is nothing special. He's just one of the heirs with a claim. Just like the person standing before you now. I gave you a chance. This situation is entirely of your own making." At this point, her hands, tied behind her back, trembled uncontrollably. Jenny could no longer maintain her arrogant facade. Her face was now a mask of terror. "I was wrong, young master. Please, spare my life." Lucien responded with silence. He swung the whip in his hand with force. "Blame your own fate." Outside the mansion, everything was as peaceful as ever. In the hallway, several figures rushed by like the wind. George muttered to himself anxiously, "Impossible. This shouldn't be happening." His eyes were fixed straight ahead. Just a few days ago, he was being trampled by Zeno to the point of fleeing. And now he suddenly declares he's going to kill someone? What in the world is going on? And that's not the only suspicious thing. I anticipated something like this and had people watching Lucien's mansion. There's no way the servants wouldn't have tried to stop him. He realized everything was in chaos. Even though I was prepared, things have gone too far. George panted before Lucien's door. This means he's already won over all the servants. A nearby attendant tried to calm him. "Young master, this report must be mistaken. You need to calm down." Another shared the sentiment. "That's right. With his personality, there's no way he'd dare harm anyone." The attendant felt he was right. To him, Master George is the most terrifying person there is. Yes, this situation is indeed very strange. Just then, a blood-curdling scream came from inside the room. The door was thrown open. Drops of blood fell in the silent space. Jenny had collapsed under Lucien's merciless whipping. The image was gruesome and horrifying. George immediately lost his composure. "What the hell are you lunatics doing?" Lucien merely glanced at him as if it were nothing. "Brother, what brings you here?" "Forgive me, I'm busy at the moment. Come back another time. Today, I must uproot this filth once and for all. The two attendants beside him were stunned, as if they couldn't believe their eyes. Hugo, get her up. As you command, young master. George could no longer hold back and ordered, Oliver, Z, get over there and bring Jenny back here. Immediately. Yes, sir. The two men rushed toward Lucien. He didn't move, only speaking softly, Hugo. If anyone dares to come within 3 steps of us. Lucien showed George no courtesy. After I take this maid's head, he turned back, his eyes wild and challenging. I will bear all related responsibilities. The two attendants immediately halted. Hugo held a knife to Jenny's throat, ready to strike at any moment. Don't even think about leaving here alive. Rest assured, master. Jenny, her arrogant image completely shattered, looked up with a tear-streaked face and begged, Master George. George raised his hand and roared, put that knife down now. If you dare defy my order, it won't just be you. I'll have your entire family beheaded and hung on the city walls for all to see. But Hugo's reply was a flat refusal. I cannot obey. He spoke in a calm, low voice. I serve only young Master Lucien. His eyes were sharp and murderous, but his words were utterly loyal. I have no reason to take orders from someone who is not my master. Whatever happens, as long as it is my master's command, it is my duty to carry it out. George's hands clenched, trembling. It took him a long moment to demand, Lucien, what crime did Jenny commit to deserve such a severe punishment? As if waiting for this cue, Lucien rattled off a list of charges. Insubordination, defying orders, and even embezzlement of public funds. I am merely delivering a fitting punishment. After speaking, he added a final, fatal blow. Fair and impartial. Surely you, of all people, should understand this best. Obviously, George couldn't argue and could only grit his teeth in anger. The current Vandyck family succession structure. Eldest son, Jason Vandyck. Second son, George Vandyck. Power was clearly divided between their two factions. To be precise, for George, consolidating his faction's power before the day of decision was paramount. But not long ago, he was humiliated by Lucien in public. As a result, he had to dismiss his trusted knight, Henrik, losing a significant asset. With things as they were, if he couldn't save Jenny, who was incredibly important to him, it would send a direct signal to his subordinates, and it would surely become the start of cracks and mistrust. In short, this was a complete dead end. The tense atmosphere lingered for a while. Finally, George admitted defeat. You win. Let her go. His words stunned his two attendants. Hans' jaw dropped at this turn of events. Hugo still held the blade close to Jenny's neck. Lucien stood silently, not yet responding. In reality, his mind was filled with sarcastic thoughts. Asterisk, how ridiculous. You think a single sentence can end things so easily? After trampling on someone else's precious life? Asterisk. Asterisk, or do you think your tongue is made of gold, so everyone must believe you? These nobles are such a pain. Asterisk. Lucien calmly waved his hand and replied innocently, Brother, what are you talking about? What when? Every word was an insult, a knife twisting in George's gut, making him tremble with rage. I am simply fulfilling my duty as the third son. Moreover, this is a mistake for which no one can escape punishment. Lucien stated the facts gently. If we let this slide as if nothing happened, how do you think others will see it? He turned as if to dismiss the matter. But since my respected brother has spoken so seriously, I too would like to end things here. However, the next second, a cunning smile crept onto Lucien's lips. He looked at his brother and said, It completely lacks justification. George, already furious, was now like fuel added to a fire. He gritted his teeth, forcing out each word. Stop beating around the bush. I want a straight answer. What do you want? Lucien paid no mind to his anger and calmly explained, According to the old laws, anyone who dares to touch another's property must largely suffer the same punishment. Jenny's eyes trembled with fear at every word. That is, to compensate many times the value of what was taken. George now understood the purpose of this punishment. Lucien flashed a bright smile, as if admiring his prey. In your case, brother, you must already know the exact figure, right? Outside the mansion, the sunlight was warm and brilliant. Sigmund stood before the window, looking at the scenery. His face was resolute and cold. Rewinding time a bit, Edwin was reporting an incident to him, and for that reason, the matter was concluded as such. Sigmund calmly read the information in the report. He lifted his cold eyes and asked, "Head butler, is this report true?" Edwin affirmed with absolute certainty. "I investigated it myself, my lord." He recounted the events truthfully. Young Master George paid young Master Lucien under the guise of compensation. The total amount was 10 times the original sum. He continued his report. As for young Master Lucien, he brought in an outsider named Hugo to quickly purge the spy network in the logging area. Sigmund listened to everything calmly. As a result of that, the third son's logging operation, the details Edwin had recounted echoed in his mind, is now under stricter control than any other area. A sound came from outside. Sigmund spoke to the person outside. "Come in." Lucien entered and bowed respectfully. "I heard you summon me, father." Sigmund glanced at him briefly. Suddenly, the room fell into an indescribable silence. Lucien also felt something was strange. Strange. The look in his eyes seems a little different than before. Just then, Sigmund suddenly spoke. "It seems you've caused quite a bit of trouble lately, haven't you?" He answered without hesitation. "It's not yet at a level to be called major, father. I was just disciplining a servant whom even his own master couldn't control." He gripped the arm of his chair and stated the result. "But in the end, you humiliated your older brother." Sigmund spoke calmly. "He will surely hold a grudge for this. Are you sure you can handle it?" Lucien answered frankly, without fear. "Regarding this, I am prepared to accept all consequences." He stood straight and replied with an upright tone. "I am merely restoring proper order and hierarchy." Then he gave an arrogant smile. "If I were to avoid doing what must be done for fear of the consequences, then what meaning would the Vandy name have? I simply chose to do what was necessary to prevent the family's reputation from being tarnished." Finally, he just closed his eyes and gave a slight nod. He suddenly spoke, breaking Lucien's monologue. "If George continues to provoke you relentlessly," then he gave what sounded like an order, "you have the right to retaliate." Just then, Sigmund's tone shifted sharply. "But if that clash exceeds the permissible limits," he dropped a bombshell that stunned Lucien. "At that time, I will side with George, regardless of who is right or wrong." Lucien couldn't help but ask, "Father, what is the meaning of that?" The reply was Sigmund's cold face. "Is there anything to be surprised about?" He spoke with impartiality. "Although George is a bit hot-headed, his achievements for the family are not insignificant. Unlike you, who has let a year pass by meaninglessly. As the head of the family, it is only natural to choose the one who has contributed to the family." Lucien stroked his chin, thinking, "Those words just now. If I'm not mistaken, it seems you're telling me to surpass my brothers." Sigmund neither denied nor confirmed it. "Accumulate power and bring benefit to the family." He looked straight at him and said sternly, "When you do, you will receive the answer to your question." How could Lucien not understand his meaning by now? He's deliberately pressuring me to force me to act. His brain worked at top speed. And if he's willing to be this assertive, it means the succession structure is about to be settled. Lucien suddenly gave an arrogant and confident smile. That's why, before it's too late, he wants to push me to seize the opportunity. Is this always the role of a father? Very well. If you're this worried about your son, Lucien pulled a piece of paper from his coat. He placed it on the table and spoke calmly. "Father, allow me to be direct." He pushed the stack of documents towards Sigmund and said loudly, "What would you think if I told you I've already prepared a move? And what's more?" Lucien's face was radiant with a joyful smile. "It's a big move." Outside the room, everything was quiet. Sigmund was intently reading the document in his hands. The next moment, his hand clenched so tightly that veins popped out. He looked straight at Lucien and asked, "Is this report true?" Sigmund anticipated the outcome. "If you fabricated this out of a desire for merit, confess now." Lucien's reply was a firm assertion. "It is true. There is not a shred of falsehood." His next words made Sigmund fall silent. "And I have captured the inside man who was working to distribute the drugs under the orders of the Marquis Logren's family." Lucien spoke up, wanting to prove himself. "You can verify it right now." The next second, a wave of power was suddenly released, radiating outwards. Sigmund's voice was filled with rage. "Bernhard, that shameless Marquis." He glared, his eyes burning with anger, daring to defile Vandy territory. Lucien, standing his ground, could feel the oppressive aura. The pressure is suffocating. This is the sword that protects the Empire, the head of the Vandy family. He secretly swallowed. At this rate, I'll be the one in trouble first. Then Lucien spoke up to break the pressure. Father, may I be so bold as to say a few more words? Sigmund asked coldly. What is it? Lucien then voiced his concern. Even if we report this matter to His Majesty, the Marquis Logren's family will surely sacrifice a pawn to escape. Since all their interference was through subordinate merchant guilds, there will be no formal trace of direct involvement. Furthermore, if we try to dig deeper, His Majesty, who is always wary of disputes between factions, will ultimately step in to mediate. As Sigmund listened, he was surprised by his son's assessment. His ability to assess the situation, since when? Lucien was still lost in his own conjectures. In other words, even though they've caused such a huge mess for the Vandy family, they'll just lose a little money and the whole thing will blow over. At the very least, we should take an arm from them. Like taking a key piece off a chessboard. The room fell silent. Sigmund slowly sat down in his chair. He looked at Lucien and said calmly, Speak clearly. What is your intention? Given permission, he quickly explained his plan. How to ensure they can't escape. I already have that in my hands. Not long ago, an inside man surrendered to me. Though he has no title, he is highly trusted by Logran and has risen to a high-ranking position. A memory of what Edwin had told him flashed through Sigmund's mind. Logran has recruited an outsider named Hugo. It dawned on him. So the Hugo the butler mentioned that day is this inside man. Could it be that he anticipated this situation? He tapped his fingers lightly and asked, You intend to use a traitor to turn the tables on them? Lucien answered without hiding anything. Yes, father. On their end, it will be very difficult to suspect that another high-ranking officer would betray them. Sigmund showed no expression as he listened to the explanation. You've arranged for them to think the plan is still proceeding smoothly. So it won't be long before a key figure from Logran is forced to show himself directly. Then, his voice slowly echoed in the room. This is not a trivial plan. Facing his son's surprised look, he pointed out, However, your plan has a very large flaw. Sigmund, like a supreme king who sees all, continued, You are betting everything on a single variable, that traitor from the slums. Instantly, the room was filled only with his words of instruction. It's easier to change rivers and mountains than to change a person's nature. Lucien, you must carve this into your heart. Never walk even half a step with someone untrustworthy. Lucien's lips curled into a mysterious smile. Only then did he reply, I'm not trusting him. I'm betting on his ambition. This word confused even Sigmund. Ambition, Lucien stated clearly. He said he wants to become a knight and make his name known throughout the Empire. He repeated what Hugo had once told him. He wants to carve his name into history. Sigmund couldn't help but scoff. What overconfident words. Lucien paid little mind to his tone. But for any man, that is a dream anyone would crave desperately. Lucien's face shone with belief. I will place my faith in that very dream, just like I did in my past life. Sigmund rested his chin on his hand and praised him reluctantly. What a naive reason. So sentimental. He then proposed another hypothesis. What will you do if he messes everything up? Lucien calmly gave a satisfactory answer. If that happens, I will not shirk my responsibility. The mistakes of a subordinate are the responsibility of the master. He bet his own life on it. Even if I have to pay with my head, I am willing. Sigmund listened in silence. The tension in the room had lessened. Sigmund spoke unexpectedly. When your health has recovered, come to the training ground. Lucien was taken aback by this turn of events. He looked at his son with a gentle expression. I will teach you the Lionheart sword. From this moment on, you are also one of the candidates for the position of the next family head. The grand mansion was bathed in fresh sunlight. Night gradually fell from all sides. Candles flickered in the dark. Sigmund was reading a book with Edwin behind him. Edwin bowed and spoke. I am deeply ashamed, master. Right here, in Kiahen, the heart of Vandy, to let such things happen. Sigmund closed the book and interrupted him. Enough. He turned around, his face righteous. I was the one who made you focus on the border issues. I know that alone has drained your strength. The fact that my third son discovered it first was probably just luck. After all, this was a plan that Bernhard put all his effort into concealing. Edwin stated frankly, his goal wasn't money or expanding his power, but clearly a deliberate attempt to tarnish your honor, my lord. Sigmund was not foolish to this plan. He intends to use this as an excuse to make a move in front of his majesty. He knows what the state of the empire is. A marquis who only cares for his own skin. But another matter caught his attention. More importantly, who is this Hugo who is following the boy? Edwin immediately replied. On the surface, he's known as a thug who runs a casino, but in reality, he's the leader of a new organization that has the entire underworld in fear. He reported some of the information he had gathered. He doesn't seem like the type to easily submit to others. Yet the young master was able to personally seek him out and recruit him as a subordinate. The young master's growth truly astonishes me. This made Sigmund think. Growth. His eyes were hidden in shadow, his emotions unclear. He is someone who has made a name for himself in that world of deceit and cruelty. Asterisk, if he only believed in empty promises about fulfilling dreams, he would have been trampled to death long ago. He saw Lucien's potential, the image of a master worthy of betting his life on. Asterisk. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Sigmund stated his intention. Although it's a bit earlier than planned, since he has proven his ability, I will open a path for him. Edwin had a vague idea. You mean? His voice was slow and measured. Starting tomorrow, I will pass down the family's secret techniques to him. Edwin couldn't help but praise the decision. That is a wise decision, my lord. Have you chosen who will teach the young master swordsmanship? Sigmund said it plainly. I will ask Knight Isc. Edwin was quite surprised to hear this name. Sigmund's voice seemed to drift into the endless night, though it's a bit of a shame to disturb his final years of rest. In a distant place, a stream of light stood out in the dark night. A figure sat on the ground. The gentle light shone on his body. I'm sure it will also be a meaningful time for him. The moon outside the mansion rose higher. A voice of disbelief echoed in the quiet space. Really? Han, his face streaked with tears, asked again and again, what you just said? You're not joking, are you? He brought his face close to Lucien's to confirm. You've really become an official candidate for the succession? Lucien was exasperated with the person before him. How many times do I have to say yes before you believe me, Han? Hugo, do something with this kid. Hugo, receiving the plea for help, quickly grabbed Han. He lifted him up with ease, rescuing Lucien. Senior, please calm down. Hugo continued calmly. With the young master's qualities, isn't this only natural? Besides, considering the path he will walk in the future. He frankly advised Han. For a right-hand man like you to be so shaken is not good, Senior. Han was stunned, suspended in mid-air by these words. What? The next second, his face turned strangely red. I'm the right-hand man. His eyes were wide, his mouth agape. Han immediately put on an air of importance. Oh, my right-hand man. Of course, it's true I've served the young master the longest, but I still have many shortcomings. Besides, with an outstanding talent like you here, Junior, how could I possibly be? Hugo didn't continue the praise, remaining humble as always. As expected of Senior Han. Han was shy, but also very happy. Why do you keep saying that? The left-hand man, Junior Hugo. Lucien, witnessing it all, was also pleased. Hugo, an experienced recruit, is truly different. He stood up straight and spoke to the two before him. Han, what Hugo said isn't wrong. The reason I told only you two before this is officially announced in the family is for that very reason. He glanced coolly in one direction. Lucien assessed Han for a moment. As for Han, his timidity and weak nature could be a weakness, but he had his reasons for keeping Han. However, he genuinely cares for Lucien and has enough perseverance to stand firmly by my side, even in the harshest circumstances. Therefore, if he gains experience and matures into a talent who can manage internal affairs, he will become a more reliable support than anyone else. Lucien's eyes shifted to the other side. Besides, there's no room to doubt Hugo's abilities. He was very satisfied with Hugo's performance. Asterisk, I just need to pave the way for him to become a knight. Only then can I maximize Hugo's potential, and he will become the knight who serves me, acting as a sharp sword in the future. Asterisk. Asterisk now is the time to prioritize quality over quantity. One by one, I just need to build a solid foundation for them. Asterisk. Lucien smiled brightly at his two capable aides. From now on, things are going to get busy. Han and Hugo both listened seriously to his words. The road ahead is a journey I cannot walk alone. Lucien looked at the two of them seriously. And it can only be completed with you by my side. Hugo replied respectfully, I will not disappoint you, young master. On the other side, Han responded energetically, yes, young master. Leave it to us. A new day arrived with the morning sun. The space within the mansion was vast and also served as a training ground. Lucien was standing here, preparing to practice. He took a deep breath, lost in thought. Asterisk. In my previous life, I scoured every corner of the continent in search of one thing. The martial essence of the past masters, said to be able to elevate the realm of the sword. Knowledge, asterisk. Asterisk, and among them, there was a realm one step higher. Supreme sword knowledge. But after struggling like a dog, what I obtained was not the supreme sword knowledge I had longed for, asterisk. Not even the intermediate knowledge that only knight captains could learn, but a low-grade version used by knight apprentices. Asterisk. Even knowledge itself was not something one could easily access without noble blood. Just the opportunity to learn any knowledge, as a mercenary, was a blessing from the heavens, asterisk. Asterisk. But those who were originally no match for me learned higher-level knowledge and overwhelmed me. And every time I couldn't protect my comrades for that reason, I was tormented by a thirst and craving for more knowledge, asterisk. Lucien's hand clenched in the air. Asterisk. For someone like me, an unexpected opportunity has arrived, passed down only to the succession candidates of the Vandy family and their trusted retainers. An ancient knowledge that surpasses even supreme sword knowledge, asterisk. He was incredibly determined before this opportunity. The chance to learn the Lionheart sword, Lucien couldn't help but smile. How wonderfully complex must this sword art be? He was suddenly jolted from his thoughts. Lucien let out a breath to calm himself. I'm already so tense before we've even started. He looked around. There's still some time before sword practice. According to the schedule, I was so excited I've been pacing around here since dawn. He bent down to begin his exercises. It's best to calm my mind by circulating my ki before the lesson. Lucien sat on the ground in a meditative posture. Asterisk. In my previous life, there was no systematic method. I learned swordsmanship by picking up moves or gathering fragmented pieces of knowledge. I didn't even have anyone to call a master. Asterisk. A satisfied smile crept onto his lips. Being reborn into a new life is truly different. The sunlight enveloped Lucien, creating a peaceful scene. Everything around was quiet. Outside, white birds soared in the sky. A figure appeared near the training ground. The person quietly observed Lucien below. Icy assessed him silently. A considerable amount of time has passed, yet the boy hasn't wavered in the slightest. He recalled a few memories. Asterisk. Did something trigger this change? I no longer see his former weakness. Asterisk. Earlier, Sigmund had come to him with a request. Sir Icy, could you become Lucien's sword master? His voice was gentle but extremely serious. I thought there was no hope. But looking again, there are some very noteworthy aspects. This could also be a brief amusement for you. Icy remarked with an unreadable expression of approval. If your grace says so, then his talent must be extraordinary. Sigmund felt that word was not quite right. Talent, he gently added. Rather than that, it's his mindset that is surprising. You will understand what I mean when you witness it for yourself. And that was why Icy was at the training ground. His gaze was like a blade honed 1,000 times. The Sword Saint, Icy Breitner. Chapter 16. The Sword Saint. A transcendent being who has reached the limits of ki circulation and completed the process of awakening. A supreme title bestowed upon one who has reached the pinnacle of swordsmanship. A rare existence even in the long history of the Empire. To swordsmen, he was like a god. Lucien stood before Icy, his mind in turmoil. Such a legendary figure. He couldn't hide the astonishment on his face. Is standing right before my eyes. The man with white hair and a dignified air was known to all. The Sword Saint, Icy Breitner. Icy approached and bowed to him. It has been several years since the Grand Duke's birthday. It is a pleasure to see you again, young master. He didn't beat around the bush and introduced himself. I am ISE Breitner. From today, I will be your instructor. Lucien was still stunned. Han did give me a heads up this morning. Asterisk that I would be learning swordsmanship from a knight who has served the Vandy family since the previous generation. But he should have specified it was the Sword Saint. Asterisk he regained his composure and bowed politely. It is an honor to be taught by the Sword Saint. I look forward to your guidance and instruction. This show of respect made ISE laugh instantly. I am just an old man hiding behind a title that's all name and no substance. His words surprised Lucien. Furthermore, you are a candidate for the next head of the family. Why would you bow your head so easily? He didn't hesitate to explain. Although I cannot lower the standing of my family, how can I ignore basic etiquette? And regardless of our master-servant status, you are a respectable person. Lucien's face was serious and righteous. ISE was taken aback by his serious yet careful demeanor. He spoke reluctantly. If you are so insistent, then please do as you feel comfortable, young master. Achieving his wish made Lucien overjoyed. Thank you for your understanding. He didn't delay any further. Then let's begin training immediately. Lucien replied enthusiastically. Yes, I'm ready. ISE pointed outside. Young master, let's start by running around the outdoor training field. Lucien immediately got into a ready stance, slightly bending his knees to prepare. He looked up excitedly and asked, "Are we starting right now?" ISE immediately stopped him. "Wait, young master." Lucien found it strange and asked, "Is something wrong?" He gently reminded him, "Don't you have any questions? Why do we have to run? How far do we have to run? Or what is the meaning behind this?" Lucien smiled brightly and gave an unexpected answer. "I am curious. But isn't it because it's necessary that you're asking me to do it? There must be a reason why you're not explaining." He placed his hand on his chest and declared, "As a student, I just need to follow my master's words." ISE silently made a firm judgment. Asterisk that reaction and gaze are completely different from other young masters. This child has a pure admiration for swordsmanship. Asterisk. Now I understand what the Grand Duke meant. He didn't keep Lucien waiting and replied, "Very well, young master." As soon as his words finished, Lucien shot off like the wind. Let's begin right away. The silhouette of the young man running was heroic and refreshing. ISE stood on high, observing his training. Lucien didn't slow down at all and was incredibly diligent. His long strides covered the field. Lucien had already guessed the meaning behind this. Actually, asterisk, there's another reason I followed his words without question. It's because I've already guessed the true purpose of this run. He's testing his disciple's character. In other words, he's measuring my potential. Back when I was a mercenary captain, I used a similar method, asterisk. By giving a new recruit a seemingly trivial task, you can learn a lot just by observing their reaction and attitude. He continued to push himself on the field after several laps. Suddenly, Lucien's gaze shifted to ISE. Asterisk the words I said before were meticulously planned. I've shown my mindset with a pretty good answer. Asterisk. Asterisk, so now there's only one thing left. Endurance. I'll run until I pass out. Asterisk. An hour later, Lucien, with a bewildered look on his face, realized something was wrong. He looked at his hands and then his feet in confusion. What is this? This shouldn't be happening. I've been running at full speed all this time and I don't feel tired at all. In fact, the more I run, the lighter my body feels. Lucien couldn't explain these unusual phenomena. The only thing I did to recover my body was drink a few vials of the potion I mass-produced. The only exercise was taking walks. How can this be? ISE had been watching Lucien train the whole time. He had the same questions. Asterisk I only told him to run to check his overall physical condition, so I didn't expect much from his stamina. This is absurd. Not a single drop of sweat. Asterisk. Asterisk his breathing is as still as a lake's surface. Even a knight who has tempered their mana for years would find it difficult to maintain this composure. Asterisk just then, he suddenly remembered something. When he first arrived at the training ground, Lucien was sitting in meditation. Could it be? The training ground was empty, not a single soul in sight. ISE calmly walked down to the field. He stood in Lucien's path, blocking him. Stop. That's enough running for today. Lucien found it strange and asked, Sir, is something wrong? ISE's voice was serious. You're even using mana. He spoke with an unreadable emotion. Young master, let me ask you a question. This morning, the way you calmed your mind and regulated your body. It seemed he already had an answer, but needed confirmation. Was that key circulation and not simple meditation? Lucien wasn't surprised and replied, "If you mean what I was doing in the indoor training hall," he answered very naturally. "Then yes, I was circulating my ki as you said. I find there's no better way to clear my thoughts." After hearing him, ISE silently confirmed his suspicion. "I knew it." Then he stepped forward and took Lucien's hand. "Pardon my rudeness. I want to check the condition of your body." ISE gently instructed, "Don't move, even if it feels a bit strange." His hand quickly directed a stream of power into Lucien's body. The strands of energy flowed through every pulse. ISE silently felt everything. The next moment, his eyes widened in astonishment. ISE didn't know how to describe his current emotion. I suspected it, but he has reached the same limit of ki circulation as I have. However, this isn't the end. He has surpassed the realm I've achieved. For a moment. He felt he had found the path his soul had been searching for deep inside. This child is opening a new path. On the training ground, ISE carefully held Lucien's hand, checking his pulse. After finishing his examination, he gently withdrew his hand. ISE couldn't suppress a tremor and asked, trying to stay calm, "Third young master, what is this? Since when?" Lucien didn't understand what was happening and looked up at him calmly. ISE seriously announced the results. "Since when have you reached the supreme realm of mana circulation?" Now it was Lucien's turn to be shocked, not believing his own ears. "The supreme realm? What are you talking about?" ISE stated with calm certainty. "I just examined the condition of your body, young master." He provided irrefutable reasoning. "The purity of your mana is as white as snow. There's no mistaking it." Based on his knowledge, ISE could tell. Furthermore, your body has self-adjusted to maximize mana efficiency to its absolute limit. It can be said to be in the most perfect state. The energy flows continuously, without rest, just like a spring. He kindly explained everything to Lucien. This is something that masters spend their entire lives training to achieve, and only a few ever reach this realm. Lucien secretly smiled with confidence, very pleased with this body. Although I had a vague idea, I never expected his body to be this close to perfect. After this, Lucien also made his own decision. If that's the case, then I don't need to hide anything anymore. Because I myself have many questions about my own body. He trusted that ISE would be a good guide. And these are problems that only someone at the level of a sword saint can answer. Lucien no longer hid it and slowly confessed. "If you want an answer, I started circulating mana about a month ago. My mana circuits were already open from the start." This directly added to ISE's astonishment. He also mentioned some other issues. "I've heard that circulation can cause pain and blockages, but I didn't feel any of that at all." Hearing Lucien's confession, he acknowledged him even more. This is truly beyond my imagination. It took even me decades of hard training to reach this realm. Doubts arose in ISE's mind. For him, perhaps the legends of swordsmen with ultimate techniques that could split mountains and stop rivers are true. In the end, he chose to ask directly. "Third young master, forgive my impertinence in asking this directly." ISE asked a very sensitive question. Regarding the position of the Vandy family heir, he continued calmly, without any hesitation. "You're not going to give it up, are you?" The sky was clear, but the fresh air seemed to freeze. He became tense and repeatedly questioned ISE. "Sir ISE, what do you mean? You want me to give up the position of heir?" Lucien searched himself for flaws. "Is there something wrong with my body? For example, I can't learn swordsmanship, or using mana will be dangerous." ISE's words came as a great surprise. Quite the opposite, in fact. He gently explained his question. The third young master's body can be called a perfect vessel. ISE, with his profound knowledge, gave his assessment of Lucien's development. Not only can you maximize the efficiency of your mana and body, but you also possess the talent to ascend to an even higher realm. Therefore, he wanted Lucien to focus on developing one option. In short, if the third young master devotes his entire heart and soul to the way of the sword, ISE's steady words opened a new horizon for him. Then the title of the next sword saint is definitely within reach. Until now, Lucien still couldn't believe his ears. Me? I can reach the level of a sword saint. He looked all over his body, his heart filled with extreme joy. I knew Lucien's body was not ordinary, but this is far beyond my expectations. Lucien recalled his past experiences. By a stroke of luck, I learned the ancient sword technique, the Lionheart sword. His journey was like climbing a treacherous mountain. I thought I had found the path to the realm I dreamed of in my past life. I thought I had seen the light leading to that level. Until this life, when Lucien has reached the final destination, Only then did he realize he had reached a place even further beyond. I never expected to see an even greater peak. But perhaps things wouldn't be so easy. So Lucien was very careful to confirm with him. Do you mean I must choose one of the two? Because being an heir and pursuing the path of the Sword Saint cannot go hand in hand. Icy nodded, acknowledging the meaning in his words. Precisely, third young master. But in truth, he couldn't wait. To be more accurate, my time is running out. Icy looked at his rough, wrinkled hands and understood clearly. Although the flow of mana allows me to move at this age, I can no longer deny the aging of my body. He held out his hand towards Lucien and said sincerely, for me to be able to pass on all my skills while I'm still alive, even if the third young master devotes all his efforts to the way of the sword, time is still too short. Based on his previous life, Lucien knew this was true. If I remember correctly, the Sword Saint will pass away in 8 years. That's right. There really isn't much time. However, Lucien was still hesitant and couldn't decide. In my heart, I also want to accept the Sword Saint's offer and focus only on swordsmanship. But, because more than anyone, he had seen through the nature of this world. The chaotic world of the future is not a place where strength can solve everything. No matter what, this cannot be taken lightly. Those who could survive and walk out of that hell were all those who held legitimacy. Lucien clenched his hands into fists, finding it very difficult to choose. Even though this is the opportunity I've always wished for. In the end, he chose to refuse ISC. But I must apologize to you, Sir ISC. He stated his own desire clearly. I want to live as a member of the Vandy family until the very end. Lucien bowed his head, his voice tinged with sadness and regret. Although you have made me an offer that is too wonderful, I cannot accept it. I am truly sorry. ISC didn't blame him and took the fault upon himself. I am the one who should feel ashamed for putting the third young master in a difficult position. He spoke of his past regrets. What was I doing when I was young? Only to become so greedy in my old age. So ISC just wanted to affirm his existence through him. Perhaps I just wanted, through the third young master, to leave my mark on this world. Hearing those words made him fall silent. After a moment, Lucien began to speak. Sir ISC, what if? ISC looked up, waiting for him to finish. Lucien confidently made a suggestion. There was someone else? If there was another person who possessed such talent, what would you think? Elsewhere, the space was wide open. The sound of horse hooves galloped in the wind. A young boy rode skillfully, clearing obstacles. From a distance, a figure ran hastily towards Joshua. Paul hurriedly reported the situation to him. Young master, the rumor about the third young master is true. Joshua immediately stopped his horse in front of him. He asked with a disdainful voice, what? So that ridiculous thing they were talking about is true. Joshua swept back his hair, looking very unconvinced. The story about that idiot being recognized as a new heir? From the Vandy family's young master, Joshua Vandy. Then he jumped down from his horse. Paul quickly confirmed the information for him. The rumor is true, sir. The Grand Duke has listed the third young master among the heirs. And it has now been confirmed that he also mentioned many other stories. He is also training in swordsmanship with Sir ISC. Hearing this news made his mood plummet. Damn it. All this annoying crap. Just dealing with my two older brothers is tiring enough. Joshua was extremely angry about the emerging threat. Why did a bunch of new people for the neutral faction have to pop up out of nowhere? He threw the cloth in his hand to the ground in frustration. Joshua couldn't stop complaining about Lucien. Can't that guy just lie quietly in his room like the useless trash he is? Paul had to frantically stop his outburst. Please calm down, young master. But that only made Joshua even more furious. Calm down? Who can stay calm in this situation? What if the people I worked so hard to win over start to waver? He couldn't stop shouting his contempt. Just the fact that I have to call that Lucien, who's the same age as me, brother, is enough to make me want to puke. Joshua kept biting his thumbnail, planning his next move. I can't just sit here and do nothing. Then his eyes widened as if he'd found an opportunity. There has to be a way. Joshua turned to Paul to confirm his plan. Butler, if that Lucien has started practicing the sword, then sooner or later he'll need a sparring partner, right? Without waiting for an answer, he gave a cold command. Go prepare 2 very sharp swords for me. Joshua leaned leisurely against his horse, emphasizing, they must be real swords for killing, not wooden practice swords. He was extremely confident he could teach Lucien a lesson. I just want to remind him a little, to let him know that his nature hasn't changed at all. Lucien seriously proposed to ISC. If there were another talented person, what would you think? His demeanor was full of confidence, as if to affirm, it might take some time to find them, but it will definitely be worth the effort. Lucien kept trying to convince him. To have the name of Sword Saint ISC remembered for hundreds of years more, he sincerely wanted to help ISC, would require a genius of that caliber. He didn't answer immediately, but pondered thoughtfully. Finally, ISC gently replied, I feel very sorry for seemingly placing a burden on the 3rd young master. His meaning was clear. He didn't want to bother Lucien anymore. Just having the young master care for this old man is enough. Please don't worry about it anymore. ISC only accepted his sentiment. Thank you for your kindness, 3rd young master. Lucien knew he couldn't persuade him further. Sir ISC. He also understood ISC's inner thoughts. In the end, it still sounds like a fantasy, doesn't it? Indeed, the person Lucien mentioned seemed non-existent. Asterisk, even talented knights don't catch his eye. It's no wonder that a novice like me is seen as talking nonsense when I offer to find a disciple for him. Asterisk. However, he didn't give up on the idea. But even so, because Lucien had great faith in his judgment of people, I guarantee you won't be disappointed. Because he himself had met that person before. If this Lucien is someone whose talent is recognized by the Sword Saint, then there must be others in this world who possess a genius for swordsmanship. Even though in the past, he only had an ordinary body and could only learn common, low-grade sword styles. The image of a young woman standing in a storm, facing a barrage of enemy swords, appeared in his mind. In a flash, Fel had vanished without a trace. But the surrounding enemies were heavily wounded. Even with armor, they couldn't avoid the damage. Valia had quickly resolved everything, but she used pure, innate talent to sweep the battlefield. A perfect embodiment of the sword. Her straight back showed no softness as she turned away. Fel simply sheathed her sword after finishing the job. Asterisk, the sword demon. Everything is within Lucien's calculations. She is my strongest subordinate, and she will also be the disciple who inherits everything from you. Asterisk. Back at the training ground, he and ISC were training seriously. He stood by, wanting to observe Lucien. All right, before we begin learning swordsmanship, I want to test the 3rd young master's level first. ISC even kindly instructed him on how to do it. Try striking this wooden dummy. Start with a vertical slash, then a horizontal slash, and then a diagonal slash. If you've passed the key circulation training, then controlling mana shouldn't be difficult. He had higher expectations for Lucien. Finally, show me an attack with mana infused into the sword. ISC even kindly instructed him on how to do it. Try striking this wooden dummy. Start with a vertical slash, a horizontal slash, and then a diagonal slash. If you've already mastered key circulation, then controlling mana shouldn't be difficult. He had higher expectations for Lucien. Finally, show me an attack with mana infused into the sword. Lucien tensed, gripping the sword in his hand. This is the first time I'm holding a sword in Lucien's body, isn't it? He mentally calculated the sword paths. I'll have to adjust the rhythm and force a bit, but I heard Lucien also learned swordsmanship before. Finally, he took a ready stance. In a flash, Lucien's eyes widened with determination. He unleashed a straight sword strike at the dummy. Vertical slash. Without stopping, Lucien changed the direction of his swing. Horizontal slash. He executed the movements quickly and cleanly. Diagonal slash. Lucien lowered his sword, preparing for the finishing blow. And finally, he skillfully channeled mana, resonating it with his weapon, infusing mana into the sword. Golden sparks of mana flashed in Lucien's eyes. His gaze locked onto the wooden dummy. Then, without hesitation, Lucien unleashed his final attack. The impact was followed by a cloud of dust. The wooden dummy was sent flying. As for him, he stood still, completely unharmed. Lucien smiled, very satisfied with the result. Since it's the first time with this body, the movements were a bit stiff, but for a beginner, this level isn't bad, right? He turned to look at ISC, his heart filled with anticipation. I wonder if Sir ISC expected more than this. He remained silent, showing no reaction. Finally, ISC gave his assessment. Although I had somewhat anticipated the third young master's strength, you've surprised me once again. Contrary to his expectations, he was blunt in his criticism. To put it briefly, it was absolutely terrible. Lucien was stunned by his words. He couldn't believe it and stubbornly asked ISC again. Sir ISC, what do you mean? Only then did he slowly approach. Exactly what I said, young master. ISC began his lesson in earnest. Although I don't know the exact reason, when you swing your sword, you reveal countless bad habits. He had observed Lucien carefully. You ignore the basics and just slash instinctively to survive, just like a mercenary's sword style. ISC pointed out his flaws. You focus only on speed and power, which throws the balance between your body and mana off kilter. As a result, your sword path becomes dull, and you reveal openings while moving. He also posed a question for Lucien to consider. Furthermore, on your final strike, how long do you think it took you to infuse mana into the sword? He hesitated but quickly answered. It was probably when I was trying to convert the mana. It probably took about 1 to 2 seconds. Suddenly, his attitude towards Lucien changed. That word you just uttered so casually. Lucien was startled, his eyes wide with shock. The wooden sword in IC's hand was at Lucien's neck before he knew it. He seriously corrected Lucien's thinking. Is enough time for an opponent to take your life? ISC, a veteran of the battlefield, didn't hesitate to say, you need to start by understanding the weight of that time, because an enemy will never miss a moment, no matter how brief. As for Lucien, he was thinking about what just happened. I didn't even realize it until the blade was at my neck. Now he realized how arrogant he had been. I'm such an idiot. Lucien immediately corrected his thinking. Asterisk, I almost lost my head without even knowing it. I can't believe I was still so complacent. Asterisk. Finally, he stood at attention, ready. I will take your teachings to heart. I will correct both my bad habits and my wrong attitude. ISE secretly smiled, pleased with his attitude. He turned his back and began to teach Lucien. Third young master, no matter how good your physical condition is, it's not everything. If you rely only on muscle strength, you will never defeat those who use mana skillfully. If your body isn't strong enough to bear the load of mana, your power will be dispersed, creating a weakness and ultimately leading to your demise. As ISE spoke, he channeled mana into his sword. To awaken the true power of sword techniques, you must fuse those disparate sources of power into one. A true master is born from that very balance. Then he demonstrated for Lucien. After his attack, the training dummy still showed no signs of damage. But then, it suddenly showed the effects of the technique. As ISE turned away, it completely disintegrated. He stood facing Lucien and calmly introduced, "This is the path of the sword that the third young master will have to walk from now on." A few days passed. Two swords were now clashing. Lucien and ISE were training vigorously. He easily parried each of Lucien's strikes while reminding him, "Third young master, don't let your mana flow be interrupted." In complete contrast to Lucien, who was struggling, ISE's voice was light and natural. The more the body is trained, the easier it moves as you wish. Your control of mana must also reach that level. He was even using only one hand. Furthermore, when using mana to strengthen your body, you must also reserve a portion of your power as a backup force. His eyes never left Lucien's movements. Distribute your power correctly. Lucien leaped up to slash down, but ISE easily blocked it. He pushed him back while instructing, "When everything blends to a point of balance, you will be able to see the true power of swordsmanship." Lucien's body flew a considerable distance before he managed to slow himself down. His face was filled with determination. He panted heavily, but had no intention of stopping. This reaction pleased ISE. He began to channel mana into the wooden sword in his hand and said, "All right, Let's try to apply what you've just learned. We will begin defensive training. A reminder was issued. This time, I will increase the difficulty by 1 level. And in a flash, ISE appeared right in front of Lucien. Observe carefully the speed and movement of the enemy, then counterattack with appropriate force. He raised the sword in his hand. Lucien's eyes were wide open, carefully observing every movement of his opponent. The core of Sir IC's teaching is a harmony that flows like water. He contemplated the teachings while watching the sword descend towards his head. To overcome the current gap, minimize consumption to maximize power. However, Lucien gritted his teeth, resolved, and reminded himself, don't be overwhelmed. Look straight ahead. The sword in his hand also gathered mana as he swung it. Their 2 swords clashed once more. Lucien gritted his teeth, struggling to hold his ground. ISE, on the other side, narrowed his eyes. The light from their combined power shone brightly. He observed Lucien's movements carefully. The sword was raised high once more. ISE ended the match and declared, "Today's practice is enough. Please remember today's feeling well, young master." He followed with a word of praise for Lucien. "Just like that, you can become an excellent swordsman." He just smiled wearily. Then his body went limp and he fell. Sitting on the ground, Lucien looked up at his master. He spoke politely. "Thank you for your instruction." The training ground had been heavily damaged by their fight. Repairmen were quickly summoned. Some of them couldn't believe it and asked themselves, just what kind of training was the young master doing? They were also somewhat worried about Lucien's health. "Young master, will you be all right?" Inside the main house, Lucien was so exhausted he was practically transparent, sitting listlessly in a corner. He muttered to himself, "Today's practice went smoothly, I guess." He then looked down at his trembling hand and thought, unbelievable. Such harsh training, right up to the very end. Lucien's face grew more serious. Is this to get rid of the bad habits from my past life? He looked off into the distance and concluded, I guess I have to endure it. If it helps me improve, I have to accept it. Then he looked at his cracked sword. Thanks to this, I'm starting to grasp things faster. Lucien's train of thought shifted. But the more I see it, the more unbelievable it is. His mind was now filled with admiration for ISE, creating a pressing situation that matches my strength level, then forcing me to react precisely with clear instructions. Lucien observed his movements and marveled silently. It sounds easy, but it's absolutely impossible without a thorough understanding of my body's condition. I simply relaxed my body according to his instructions, but I could feel a clear improvement. Before, I always believed that only the ultimate flawlessness was the only path to a higher realm. Things like balance, reserve power, and mana flow. I never really thought seriously about them, not even once. Lucien gently touched his sword. Even though the truly important things have always existed within me. He gripped it tightly and thought, if I had understood these teachings deeply in my past life. Memories of the past were unconsciously stirred. Lucien's final battle with his commander, along with his posture. How far could my sword have reached that man? The commander had declared, go to hell. But Jack himself was barely affected, just a little. The two of them clashed. On Jack's face was a delighted smile. The memory ended there, and Lucien wondered to himself, how many rounds could we have fought? He grimaced and muttered, is this how practice ends? I'm still not satisfied. Then other thoughts came to mind. Is there a suitable sparring partner I can test myself against? When he saw footsteps pass in front of him, Lucien was startled. Wait a minute. The figure of Joshua came into view. A voice called out, causing ISE to slowly open his eyes. Master, are you well today? Joshua had a smile on his lips, greeting him enthusiastically. Your disciple, Joshua, bows to you. He replied slowly. A pleasure to see you, fourth young master. But, what wind has blown you here? He followed with a refusal. It is currently the third young master's training time. If you have something to discuss with this old man, please come back later. However, Joshua quickly shook his head. There's no need for that, master. ISE then asked. In that case, the reason you're here is... Hearing this, Joshua didn't hesitate to admit it. That's right. He spoke up, his tone full of provocation. Now that my third brother has decided to come out and start training, as the younger brother who learned before him, I just want to help sharpen him a bit. An offer was thus made. Third brother Lucien, what do you think? Lucien's hand tightened on his sword. The smile on his face was losing its humanity. A perfect sparring partner, delivered right to my door. Everyone present was silent. Until ISE's voice broke the silence. Fourth young master, what are you saying? You intend to help the third young master with his training? Joshua just smirked and explained, don't we need to have a real match to apply the principles of mana operation in practice? He followed with an innocent declaration. I want to be that opponent. He looked towards Lucien and muttered, as you know, master, due to our current schedules, we brothers have very little time to interact. If not now, it's hard to get another chance. Joshua's voice was full of sincerity. That is why I have taken the liberty of coming here. Please, master. Lucien, on the other side, slowly stood up. He was silently judging him. Honestly, the lineage of this family. You have to hand it to their silver tongues. What help with training? A contemptuous smile appeared on his face. What help with training and interaction? Not only did he show up here uninvited. Lucien carefully observed the person with Joshua. But he also brought a real sword before his older brother who hasn't even had a week of formal training. With just that, he understood almost immediately. His intentions are so obvious they almost look naive. His goal is clearly to crush me to solidify his own position. Lucien thought as he observed Joshua's smile. This is happening under the guise of helping his brother, so there won't be any problem. He then looked at ISE. And with the Sword Saint watching, this match will carry even more weight. Even a snot-nosed brat like him dares to pressure me like this. You're not going to give up, are you? Sir ISE is advising me to give up the succession battle. Lucien observed his actions. If I just let this go, he'll be put in an awkward position. He then took a few steps forward. A declaration was made. Sir ISE, please accept my younger brother's offer. ISE was taken by surprise. Third young master? Lucien was still smiling brightly. My little brother's sentiment is so precious. He also began to play the part of a good older brother. Of course, I can't turn a blind eye to this rotten attitude. And this idea that those sweet-sounding lies can fool others, this cannot be ignored. However, his words were full of sarcasm. I will personally teach this clueless little brother of mine. He slowly walked towards Joshua. Today is the last time I'll indulge your tantrums. Don't put Sir ISE in a difficult position any longer. On the side, ISE himself was observing and thinking. He must have seen through the fourth young master's intentions and chose to confront him directly. Finally, ISE came to a decision. In the end, blood ties are a bond that cannot be broken. If you two wish it, I will approve. He then spoke, instructing the two. However, this will be the last such match. And, if I see any danger, I will stop it immediately. Both Lucien and Joshua replied in unison. I will keep that in mind. He turned to Joshua, placing a hand on his head as he continued. Let's make it a great match, little brother. Joshua's face contorted with anger, but he could only smile. Sounds good, brother. The dueling ground was quickly prepared. ISE acted as the referee, calmly stating the rules. This is not a battle to injure one another, but a practical match to test what you have both learned. He instructed them thoroughly. The third young master must enter this match with a learning mindset, as this is his first real spar. And everyone in the vicinity nodded as they listened. The fourth young master must bear the responsibility as the one who held a sword earlier. You both must fight in a way that does not bring shame to the Vandy family name. The hands of both opponents were on the hilts of their swords. If you are ready, draw your swords as a signal. They drew their swords and took ready stances. Joshua, on his side, was thinking, Lucien Vandy, since when did you act like an older brother? The anger in his heart grew. All you do is call me little brother, little brother. You're just acting high and mighty because you were born a little earlier. And then Joshua made his resolve. All right, let's see if you still dare to open your mouth at the end of this match. His eyes went wide. This isn't about who was born first, but who is truly superior. The expression on Joshua's face did not escape Lucien. What a vicious look. He probably wouldn't even make that face at his mortal enemy. He also tightened his grip on his sword and thought, anyway, this cold, heavy feeling. Lucien's expression changed with his thoughts. It's been 2 months. He remembered his past as a mercenary. Asterisk, if it were before, I would have used dirty tricks to win. But, asterisk. Then he smiled confidently. Today, I will face this battle as the third young master. Lucien glanced in one direction and continued his thoughts. If I accidentally use a sword technique from my past life, the person he was observing was none other than ISE. Asterisk, it definitely wouldn't escape Sir ISE's notice. And, asterisk, Lucien thought cautiously. Asterisk, no matter how cunning and treacherous that kid is, he's still just a naive brat who hasn't seen the world. And so, he finally came to a decision. For now, he's my little brother, so I'll go easy on him as I should. However, Joshua on the other side had already started taunting him. Where'd all that confidence from before go? Why are you sneaking glances at me? He continued to provoke him enthusiastically. Holding a real sword now. Are you finally starting to get scared? Don't worry too much. They say serious accidents often happen in real sword fights, but that's only when the skill levels are equal. He even offered kindly. If you're still scared, I can switch to a wooden sword for you. This time, it was Lucien who cut him off. Right? That would be for the best. I take back what I said about going easy. The smile on his face was losing its humanity. That is, if you don't want to get hurt. For a disobedient little brother, a good beating is the best medicine. Lucien's way of addressing him annoyed Joshua. Little brother. He got into a stance, preparing to attack. Joshua's footsteps quickened as he charged towards Lucien. His eyes were wide open, his mouth muttering a declaration. I'll make you regret those words. Faced with this action, Lucien quickly defended himself. However, just as I expected, teaching him a lesson while holding back my strength won't be easy. He observed his opponent's movements and thought. Asterisk, Joshua has also been taught by the Sword Saint. His fundamentals and movements are not to be taken lightly. Asterisk, Lucien's eyebrows furrowed. Moreover, I've used up almost all my mana in the spar with the Sword Saint just now. He pouted, thinking. Asterisk, however, his lack of experience is something he can't hide. I can't believe he fell for such a light taunt so easily. Asterisk, Lucien's foot slowly lifted. He then channeled mana into it. Lucien took a defensive stance, watching Joshua close the distance. Applying the Sword Saint's teachings on how to focus power and circulate mana, and countering with a reverse attack. In a flash, he appeared right in front of Joshua. I'll seize his momentary opening. ISE was completely surprised. Joshua's attendants were so shocked their jaws dropped. Joshua was still busy being stunned as he heard Lucien's voice. Grit your teeth and block this. On his face was a triumphant smile. If you don't, you'll lose your tongue, you know. The sword in his hand came down with great force. Little brother. The sky now looked somewhat gloomy. The two steel swords clashed. Joshua struggled to block Lucien's attack. His hands trembled while his opponent wore a triumphant smile. Lucien then spoke mockingly. Listen here, little brother. A true man. At the same time, Joshua staggered to his feet. Doesn't kneel easily before anyone. He was so angry he gritted his teeth. Humph. And he successfully pushed Lucien back. Get that mouth of yours away from me. He followed with an attack that sent Lucien flying back. Joshua declared furiously. That was just one move. You only survived because you were lucky. You won't be so lucky next time. He immediately charged forward to attack. A sword strike carrying mana was unleashed. The more Lucien retreated, the faster Joshua pressed on. He managed to block Joshua's attack. Joshua's face now wore an extremely smug expression. Lucien, however, remained calm as he parried. He countered, and Joshua returned the favor. His expression gradually became more intense. Lucien's face showed a similar attitude. The sword strikes were unleashed with increasing power. ISE and the butler were watching from the side. Unable to hold back any longer, Joshua's butler hesitantly suggested, Sir ISE, this match is getting too violent. Shouldn't we stop it here? He wiped his sweat as he explained, Fourth young master Joshua has always seen young master Lucien as a rival. Because they are close in age, they were always compared, which only deepened his resentment. Therefore, whenever it involves young master Lucien, he ignores all reason. He then voiced his own worries. If a mistake happens and someone gets hurt. Hearing this, ISE replied, You're worrying too much, head butler. A proud smile was on his face. The fourth young master may be a bit hot-headed, but he's not foolish enough to forget his station. Right now, he's just venting his anger in a crude and childish way. ISE's voice was full of certainty. If there's anything you should be worried about, it should be the opposite. This statement confused Paul. What do you mean? ISE's expression became serious almost immediately. He observed the two fighting and silently assessed. That's right. Considering the gap in their strength, that reasoning doesn't seem very logical. ISE was thinking to himself. The third young master was born with a wonderful, innate physical talent, but lacks the time and experience to use it properly. In contrast, the fourth young master only has average talent, but he has constantly honed it through arduous training. Joshua's and Lucien's swords clashed once again. This means that even in a match without using sword techniques, the gap between them is too large to be bridged by luck. ISE observed Joshua's face and thought. However, the fourth young master is letting his emotions take over, rendering his own advantage useless. He then looked at Lucien. Meanwhile, the third young master is calmly waiting for an opportunity. ISE's fingers tapped lightly on his arm. The fact that he can remain so calm when facing a real blade means he has definitely overcome his own fear first. An assessment was made towards Lucien. To show such composure, if he's not an idiot who doesn't fear death, then he must possess the strong will of someone who has been close to death countless times. ISE's expression grew more serious. And for some reason, I have a feeling it's the latter case. On the side, the movements were affecting the dueling ground. Joshua and Lucien continuously swung their swords at each other. He shouted, "Where's that arrogant attitude from before, huh? You should have listened to me when I was being nice." He then made a declaration. "If you beg me to sheath my sword, I might just agree." Lucien, on his side, was blocking and thinking, this kid, is he actually enjoying this? His arm had started to tremble. He must be so pleased at the thought of crushing his own brother. My body trembles every time I have to block his attacks. While fighting, Lucien was calculating. Initially, I planned to end this in a single blow, because there's no easier enemy to deal with than one who easily falls for taunts. The only mistake was that Joshua is better than I expected, and I don't have enough mana to take him down in one strike. Right now, I don't even have enough mana to strengthen my body. If that's the case, he finally came up with a plan. I'll put all my strength into the next clash. He put his thought into action. Lucien swung his sword forward with all his might. Joshua's eyes widened in complete astonishment at this move. Lucien's sword suddenly became much heavier. Does he still have this much strength left? However, he reassured himself by observing Lucien's tired appearance. No, looking at his condition, that's impossible. He then smirked. He's just wringing out his last bit of strength for a final struggle. With that, Joshua raised his sword and declared, "I'll end this ridiculous match right here." He brought his sword down with great force. Lucien, on his side, hadn't moved yet. However, his eyes had changed. A declaration followed. Good. That's exactly what I wanted. Joshua slammed his sword into the ground, sending up a cloud of white dust. However, he had only hit empty ground. He managed to dodge my full power attack. Joshua was openly bewildered. All right, I can still understand that. But if my eyes aren't playing tricks on me. He recalled Lucien's recent expression. He was smiling just now. I'm sure of it. Was this all part of his plan? At this moment, Lucien spoke up. Joshua Vandy, with that last sword strike, you completely failed to account for a follow-up attack, didn't you? A series of questions followed. You didn't see that my exhaustion was just bait? Lucien wore a vile expression as he continued. And that's why you're the little brother. And it's also why I'm your older brother. The more Joshua heard, the more irritated he became. He was determined to counterattack. Save those annoying lectures for when you've actually beaten me. He swung his sword forward. Unexpectedly, something appeared in its path. Lucien's foot had blocked his sword. He then pinned Joshua's hand to the ground. He struggled to get free, but Lucien had no intention of letting that happen. I will. Don't worry. Lucien's smile became increasingly inhuman. This time, what do you think you'll be facing next? Joshua looked up, his voice trembling as he called out, "Brother." Lucien himself was raising the sword in his hand. He prepared to strike down with a smug look. You only call me brother when you're cornered, don't you? Next, only Joshua's terrified scream could be heard. News of the duel between the two brothers spread quickly throughout the entire family. The sound of discussion filled the room. Have you heard the latest news? I'm talking about how young Master Lucien completely overwhelmed Master Joshua. Two attendants walked together, constantly discussing. Don't talk nonsense. Young Master Lucien clearly just started training. How could that happen? I thought so too at first, but the Sword Saint himself witnessed the whole thing. I saw it. Even the maids were laughing and talking. I heard the fourth young master showed up looking very arrogant, but when he left, he looked completely defeated. I even heard he ended up crying. Of course, there was a reason the story spread so quickly, and also a reason it was slightly embellished. They cheered when they saw Hugo. Hugo, you're just in time. Please tell us all the details of what happened that day. On the other side, Han appeared. Just in time, Han. Is it true that the Sword Saint himself praised young Master Lucien's talent? Hugo rubbed his chin, feigning surprise as he commented, the news spread that fast? This was supposed to be kept top secret. Han, however, was incredibly proud as he continued. When young Master Lucien had Master Joshua under control, do you know how shocked I was when he confiscated his younger brother's sword as a trophy? Perhaps very few realized that this was all orchestrated by one person. A humming sound echoed in the room. Lucien stood leisurely, looking outside and singing. He licked his lips, muttering his calculations. The conditions are perfect for stirring up some rumors. He then smirked and told himself, be grateful I decided to stop there, little brother. He recalled Joshua's ugly expression at that moment. Brother. The sword in Lucien's hand was raised high. His face wore a wicked smile. So now I'm your brother again, am I? A scream was heard immediately after. Joshua's face was pale as he repeatedly begged. I was wrong, brother Lucien. Please. Lucien, on the other side, was grim. He didn't answer. However, his sword came down on the ground instead of hitting Joshua. The force of the blow was so strong it broke his sword in half. Only then did Lucien speak. Joshua, don't ever think of pulling a stunt like this again. If you do, things will get much worse. The smile on his face was full of threat. Know when to stay out of trouble and start acting your age. He added a friendly reminder. If you heard me, you'd better take it to heart. For now, he glanced to the side while commenting. That should be enough to keep my annoying little brothers quiet for the time being. Now that things at home have settled down. What Lucien was looking at was a piece of paper. He muttered to himself, is it time to start dealing with the Logrand family? Later, in another place, Sigmund spoke with a cold expression. I assume this is the secret report Hugo sent you. Lucien, opposite him, bowed his head seriously. Yes, father. He pointed to the contents of the paper. In 7 days, at Vespa, he has arranged a meeting with a representative from the Logrand family. Hearing this, Sigmund asked, the Vespa region? His hand tapped rhythmically on the table. Absurd. He followed with a comment. Even though that place is practically abandoned, it's still right next to Kiahen. Lucien calmly acknowledged, yes. They must have chosen that place thinking you wouldn't be watching. Father, Sigmund's face became pensive. A blind spot indeed. He turned to look at his son and questioned, so why did you decide to bring this to my attention? This question surprised Lucien a little. I thought I had given you full control of this situation. He stated his purpose clearly. I need more strength. This statement made him feel a bit surprised. Strength. Lucien calmly explained his thoughts. Just because a predator has been lured into a trap doesn't mean I have the necessary means to take it down. Hearing this, Sigmund felt somewhat satisfied. And so you came to me, the one who holds those means. He pointed out his son's purpose directly. Some might call that a logical decision. However, despite your previous claims of proving your own worth, it seems you're just trying to ride my coattails. He followed with a question. Do you really think people will recognize an achievement that isn't your own? Lucien remained silent at this. Sigmund continued his lecture. A hunter only gains a reputation when he takes down his prey with his own efforts. If you can't complete it yourself, then it's just a hollow victory. His hand slowly rose. I gave you the opportunity and the power to handle this yourself, yet you chose safety over risk. And then he slammed his hand on the table. Is this really all you can do? The pressure radiating from Sigmund was not insignificant. Give me an answer, Lucien. Only then did Lucien reply softly, "That doesn't matter. If that's what's necessary to end the hunt." He maintained a stoic expression, unaffected by Sigmund's pressure. "Then, that is the path I will not hesitate to take." He glanced over upon hearing this bold statement. Lucien continued to present his thoughts. "If the way you describe is truly the path of a noble, then perhaps only those who already possess great power are capable of walking it. While innocent people are living in fear of a monster, to declare that it's brave just because I faced it alone is ultimately just foolish recklessness. Even if successful, it would still be a foolish act born from poor judgment. And in the end, I would lose everyone's trust." And then he came to a conclusion. "For me, the true meaning of the hunt is not the killing, but what we protect." Lucien continued as he lightly touched his neck. "As long as I can ensure the threat is completely eliminated, why should I care if others see my achievements as incomplete?" He added an innocent comment. "That being said, I have no intention of playing the part of a brainless saint." His hand now reached for the flowers. Lucien roughly crushed them. "It's just that, if the person to whom I hand over the credit proves themselves incapable of earning it on their own." He let the petals scatter in the air to punctuate his presentation. "Then it will be all too clear who is truly worthy of inheriting it." Hearing this, Sigmund remained silent. His demeanor softened slightly as he spoke. "That answer is sufficient." Sigmund lifted his teacup and replied, "To have someone challenge me so directly. I wonder how many years it's been. I certainly never expected to hear such words from you." This comment made Lucien visibly excited. "You have given an excellent answer, Lucien. As a man, you must have absolute faith in the path you have chosen." Sigmund continued speaking softly as he drank his tea. "If you let a few words shake your resolve, you will never amount to anything." Hearing this, Lucien asked, "Was this all just a test?" Sigmund didn't hesitate to admit his purpose. "Yes, I wanted to see if you would falter in the face of authority." He then began to explain. "Unless you are lost because you are still searching for your own truth, who would follow a leader who cannot even defend his own beliefs?" Every word had its meaning, let alone becoming the head of the family. Such a person is not even worthy of the title of a man. Lucien listened and thought, "I knew it. He knew full well that this task was beyond my current capabilities, so I was curious why he was being so harsh." He sighed and assessed. Honestly, nothing in this world is simple. At least the discussion seems to have ended on a good note. Then Lucien couldn't help but ask, "Father, what about the support for this campaign?" Sigmund calmly proposed a plan. "I will provide you with the means you requested." He held the paper as he continued. "With the current situation, a large force would attract too much attention." He then looked at Lucien. "And they will likely move in small groups to avoid detection." After listening, Lucien just smiled brightly and accepted the teachings. "You are right, Father. Therefore, if possible, I would like to request a few of the family's elite knights." A week had passed. "We've arrived in the Veska territory." A comment was made. "This place is nothing but a dilapidated ruin." Lucien observed his surroundings and continued, "The actual condition of this city is even worse than the rumors. I can hardly sense any signs of life in the surrounding area." Hugo replied, "Although it's quite close to Kiahen, this place has been completely depleted of resources. Its role as a vital transport hub was taken over by other cities long ago. Now, this land is just a ghost town, a haven for vagrants and the homeless." They discussed as they walked. "That's precisely why I chose to set up our base of operations here." At this moment, Hugo suddenly turned to Lucien and asked, "By the way, are you really not going to tell me? How did you know every detail of my subordinate's plan?" At those words, he just smiled lightly. "Even my senior seems to be completely in the dark about this." He then presented his own thoughts. "I will have an answer for you when the time is right. For now, let's focus all our attention on the prey before us." Lucien crossed his arms and questioned calmly, "You've set the trap carefully, right?" Hugo nodded in reply. "Of course, young master. Everything is ready. Inside the workshop, we've arranged everything to perfectly match the false information we fed them." The room had been meticulously prepared to serve as a perfect front. And, he continued to explain, "As for the item you requested, young master, it has also been prepared. The only thing missing is the reinforcements to take them down." However, just a second later, Hugo was stopped by a question from Lucien. It wouldn't feel right if we had to rely on my father's reinforcements, would it? He quickly denied it. Not at all, sir. Considering the serious nature of the matter we are facing this time, I understand very well that we cannot afford to make even a single mistake. He then looked down at his hand. It's just that. I feel very disappointed in my own weakness. If only I had enough strength to handle everything cleanly by myself. Hugo then made a statement. I could have helped you shine, young master. Lucien placed a hand on his shoulder. He replied seriously, Hugo, it's not that I don't understand how you feel. And then he gently reminded him. But remember, our journey has only just begun. Don't let impatience cloud your judgment and cause us to stray from our chosen path. His next words were spoken with a hint of mockery. Besides, you're only 30. The road ahead is still long. Hugo's mood lightened because of this. Young master, I'm actually only 23. He then explained sincerely, 30 is still a long way off for me. The age gap between us isn't that big, young master. This bombshell of a truth made Lucien's jaw drop. A dead silence fell between them. Lucien turned his head away, avoiding the topic. Right? Well then, since you're still in your early 20s. Unexpectedly, his words only hurt Hugo's young soul more. Please don't correct it again, sir. It only makes me feel worse about myself. Crows cawed as they flew overhead. Lucien stood rooted to the spot, looking around and assessing. Anyway, the decisive moment is approaching. But why haven't I seen any sign of them yet? Their conversation was interrupted by a call. Third young master. Hugo reacted almost instantly. His hand gripped the hilt of his sword and quickly drew it. But before he could act, his hand was stopped. A comment followed. Too slow. This movement made Hugo feel concerned. His speed surpasses the limits of a normal person. My weapon is being held so tightly by him. I can't move it an inch. He grimaced, his guard raised. This is the first time someone has beaten me in terms of physical strength. And now, I've been restrained by this guy and rendered useless. However, Lucien then spoke up. Stand down, Hugo. He explained softly. This person is not our enemy. However, Lucien's expression couldn't hide his own wariness. But the killing intent radiating from him is directed at us. What is your real purpose for coming here? The identity of the newcomer was thus revealed. The Blackguard. Hugo stepped back, both to protect Lucien and to keep a distance from the man. He then turned and asked, Young master, could it be that the reinforcements you mentioned earlier are the legendary Blackguard? Speaking of which, entrusted with carrying out the most secret and brutal missions of the Vandy family, they were the army of shadows that only obeyed the orders of the family head. Lucien calmly confirmed. That's right, Hugo. They are the hunters sent here to help us with this mission. A few other members also appeared. All of them were collectively known as the Blackguard. A member of the squad spoke up. Greetings, third young master. His expression was extremely serious. What I just did was just a small test to measure the reflexes of your guard. There was absolutely no ill intent. In his heart, Lucien was constantly calculating. Even in my previous life, their existence was kept so secret that I once doubted if they even existed. It seems the terrifying rumors about them, like ghost stories, were not exaggerated at all. He then cautiously assessed the situation. I couldn't even sense their approach, despite being on high alert. And even standing right in front of me, they can conceal their presence so perfectly that I can't grasp it at all. Each one of them is a truly terrifying monster. Finally, a smile appeared on Lucien's face. He thought of Sigmund and muttered, This is truly beyond imagination. Father has given me an immense amount of support. They quickly moved inside a house. The one who began the briefing was none other than Lucien. I believe you have all been clearly instructed on every detail of this mission. The Lagrange family has fallen into our trap and is currently on their way here, just as planned. He explained seriously. Therefore, you have only one objective to carry out. Capture the mastermind behind all of this alive. As for the others, you are permitted to eliminate them all. Once they have dared to cross that line, we have no need to show mercy. Then Lucien began to delegate. I leave all remaining decisions to you. His demeanor was observed and commented on by a member of the Blackguard. At first, I thought the Grand Duke sent us here just to help the third young master avoid getting his own hands dirty. But it seems that wasn't the only purpose. Even when faced with an unexpected situation, he maintains the calm and charisma of a true young master. Asterisk. And right now, he is also silently assessing our strength to prepare for any future incidents. He ventured a guess. Could it be that this family is about to enter a new era with this young master? Finally, they spoke in unison. We are ready. The sky had turned to evening when the meeting ended. A carriage rolled slowly down the road. When it stopped, the door was quickly opened. Philip's cursing could be heard even before he stepped out. What a long and boring trip. A maid handed him a letter. If it weren't for my father's orders, I would never set foot in this godforsaken place. Philip slowly stepped down from the carriage, his expression filled with disgust. Let's get this over with quickly and go home. Philip's eyebrows furrowed as he muttered his observation. The air here is so foul and nauseating. Philip Logran, second son of the Logran family,